My guest today is the owner of Ghost Coast Distillery in Savannah, Georgia. And there's really no better relationship, per se, or marriage of two industries than the golf industry and the liquor industry. And if you don't think so or don't understand what I'm saying, then you've got to probably spend a little bit more time at your local 19th hole. But aside from that, my guest, his name is Chris Sywassink. He's a very dear friend of mine. In fact, from the time we met, we hit it off right from the beginning, and why I always refer to him as my bro from another mo. What he's doing in the liquor industry in a very short period of time is really turning a lot of heads of the major players. And a lot of that revolves around the culture that they've created. Not only in their alignment with the culture of the city of Savannah, and I'm not going to get into that. I'll let you hear Chris speak to that himself. But one of the founding principles that they have is failure isn't only a necessary thing, but it's instrumental in taking the first step towards revolutionizing anything that you're trying to do. That discussion revolved a lot, whether it was about their recipes, about trying different things, allowing his employees to make mistakes so long as they learn, grow, and develop from it, and has created this culture within that his employees love to be there. He loves getting up every day in the morning and going to work, and it's just doing great things, not only for he and his business and his employees, but they're big supporters of the city and anything local, where they try to incorporate whatever they're using as far as their recipes or anything else. They try to utilize industries that are either local to Savannah or at least at a minimum local to Georgia. In addition to all these things, Ghost Coast was one of the sponsors of the PGA Tour's Corn Ferry event in Savannah, and Chris talks a lot about that whole experience and what they learned from that, given that the PGA Tour is one of the best branders and marketers in the world. Not only how that helped them in the early stages of the career, how it introduced them to a lot of people that they probably never would have gotten introduced to or even thought to pursue, and also how that's helping them now that they're mature and they're growing very well, and how it's going to help them in the future. So a lot of great things in this show, a lot of stories. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. And the cool thing was we did this live in the distillery, so if you hear some background noise, some people laughing, you'll know why. And anytime you go into his distillery, whether it's just to sit down and have some drinks with some friends or to take one of their tours, which I highly recommend if you're going to be in the Savannah area, there's always laughter, there's always a good time, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to go sit down and hang out. So please give a big, big Golf 360 welcome to my friend and Ghost Coast Distillery owner, Mr. Chris Sywassink. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey, everybody. I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right, we got our drinks. I'm here in Savannah at the famous Ghost Coast Distillery with owner Mr. Chris Sywassink. All right, brother, thanks for coming. We got our drinks.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
You know, I think it's more infamous than famous, but we'll take it.
This is an awesome place. I mean, for people who haven't come, every time I brought somebody here, they're like, wow, this is pretty sweet. And I wanted to kind of talk about, the golf tie-in for somebody who might be sitting at home and say, well, what the hell are you just interviewing a guy that owns a distillery for? And the golf connection is you.
Well, that's how we came to know each other. Really.
Yeah, that's how we.
Besides the 19th hole of what I make here is for that,
And then, but you also did a tiered sponsorship of the Corn Ferry event, PGA Tour Corn Ferry.
Yeah,
that was for a couple years, right?
Yeah, it was our first, branching out into the world of sponsorship on a big scale level. Major PGA, major organization that everyone knows. So it kind of was for us. Besides, we're really, our culture here at Ghost Coast is to be involved in our community as much as we can, and that was the first real significant golf event since the seniors left us years ago. The Charles Schwab left us
across the river.
Yeah,
Savannah Harbor.
And so we were void of good golf for a while. And history here in Savannah of multiple Donald Ross courses, and his time spent here developing courses and developing kind of a history of old golf to new, and kind of cementing golf in the Low Country in Savannah and South Georgia. Up north, just up, a couple hours away, you got Augusta National.
Right.
So, we've got so much golf heritage in this part of the world that we wanted to be a part of that. We also wanted to support Savannah. We wanted to learn from some of the best organizations and, marketing and branding and things like that. PGA, you say what you want. Those guys, they know
what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. You know who PGA is. I mean, shoot, just the emblem, it's kind of right up there with, the NBA, Jerry West. And you see that stuff and you know what it is. And so we wanted to be a part of that. We wanted to learn. We're new at this from a business perspective. We just celebrated our fourth birthday on January 4th, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool. And, it was one of those deals where we got going with them 2 years ago and ran a 2-year run with them. And it was fun. Learned a lot. Learned that, we needed to, what we gained from it was good. It wasn't we learned that it wasn't for us in that perspective, just because I think it was more of the venue and the overall people that were visiting the tournament. So it didn't mesh with our brand of
or the demographic.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I mean, the demographic out at the landings is sub 65, and our product is really focused on that, right out of college, got your first job, making some pretty good coin, and you are spending a little bit more on booze because you can afford it and you want to, and it fits our lifestyle and our look and feel. And so other than the players out there, which were great and they loved the product and had a great time, it wasn't the right fit. But until you do something like that, you don't learn. And so
you got to take the leap.
Right.
Let's jump into the deep end and just see.
Yeah, but what was nice is the PGA, they gave us a great opportunity with, instead of cash, lots of money to throw at this, they were like, well, donate product. And we can do that, and we make a lot of it. And so it made more sense for us to go that route with our distributor partner and things like that. So it was great.
So the potential ROI was better on giving product than it was a financial.
Yes. By far.
Not a financial burden, but a financial cost.
It was a much more opportunistic way to spend marketing dollars, because when you make stuff your own, the cost isn't as much as if you're just throwing out dollars.
Right.
So for us, it made all the sense in the world.
You had mentioned that Ross's history here in Savannah, and we know that the Savannah Golf Club is the one. It's 1796, arguably oldest club in the country. And what's the other one? I can never remember it, but for people who are golf enthusiasts,
right,
who listen to the show, there's another great Donald Ross course here in Savannah.
There's actually 2.5, really. You've got Wilmington Golf Club. This is Donald Ross course.
That's right. That's the old Wilmington Island Club.
That's right.
And for maybe someone who don't, that's where they housed when they had the Olympics. That's where the yacht races were.
That's correct. And then Bacon Park, the public municipal course owned by the city, run by O.C. Welsh. That 27 holes is a Donald Ross design.
Okay, that was the one I was missing.
Yeah,
I knew it. Beacon Hill.
Bacon Park.
Bacon Park. I knew it was somewhere around there.
Yeah, so I mean, you go out and wait a minute, I'm forgetting the other one. The other one is at Hunter Air Force.
So there's 4 of them.
Yeah, there's 4. Hunter Airfield. It's a Donald Ross course.
Wow.
And so and that's as good. I mean, I think from all of those courses in Savannah, that one probably is as much Donald Ross link style as them all. I mean, Savannah, they've gone through several redesigns and lost. It used to be 27 holes. Now it's only 18.
Was it 27?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when did it go from 27 to 18?
I want to say
60s?
50s. The club fell on hard times in the 40s, right after the Depression, 40s and 50s, and so they ended up having to sell off some of the land to keep the place going.
And is that the land that's the cemetery now?
That's the cemetery now, yeah.
Because I remember seeing Toby, the old pro there, that had the pictures, and I said, Toby, what the hell is that? He goes, oh, that was 1 in 18 that came right up to the clubhouse.
That's right.
1 in 18, it was old school. 1 in 18, you could see it, the tees, 1 in 10 from the pro shop, but 9 and 18 both finished right there behind the club.
That's right.
Clubhouse.
And that was where that's the Catholic cemetery now. And, obviously that all was facilitated by the Catholic Church, who a large percentage of members are Catholics and Irish. So that was a way to keep the club going back right out of Depression, because, everywhere.
Where are you going to get the funds?
Membership at that point had gone through the Depression, and so they were just trying to scrape every penny. So it was that was how it worked out. And and then they bought more land from the city early or late 50s, early 60s that was old landfill, which is now 7, 8, and 9 on the front side. So that it's gone through this metamorphosis, and so those weren't original Donald Ross. They were designed.
Yeah, there's a distinct difference between 7, 8, 9, and then the rest of the golf course.
Yeah, and so that was what was, so, I mean, but that, again, it's that whole history. Nobody knows it unless you're here. That turn of the century, 1900.
But that's kind of, and we'll get into that a little later, but that nobody knows it's here is like the overall mantra / culture of Savannah.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, hey, we're going to do what we're going to do, and we don't give a shit if anybody, and in fact, we prefer that nobody knows
And
about
we're not going to tell your ass
it.
about it.
We're not going to broadcast it.
Right. You've got to be worthy enough to learn that information.
I like to think the podcast is the same way. I'm not going to advertise it. You just got to be worthy of finding it.
Cheers to that.
Shit, I forgot where we were going before I cut you off. Oh, this sponsorship stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, again, we learned from a great teacher, and in hopefully not so distant future, we'll evolve. There'll be other opportunities that will make sense for Ghost Coast and PGA. We left on good terms. At least I think so, and I know we are. But I mean, I think we'll be fine, and we'll get back with those guys in some capacity, whether it's here in Savannah or in other states that we move into. I mean, we're right now 4 years in. We're in 11 states in the country.
Wow.
Getting ready to add 2 more here probably in the next 30, 60 days. And so we're growing. I mean, we're in a growth mode right now, which is great because you don't grow, you die, especially in this industry.
And the people who sit there and say, "Oh, the economy's bad. It's this. You can't push it." It's like you understand that some of the best companies throughout the history of this country were started in recessions, depressions, or what. I mean, look at Apple.
Yeah.
Started in a recession. So it's like, yeah, take advantage of the opportunity. Especially in your business, because when people, liquor is one of the things when people get depressed, right?
Well, I mean,
and there's nothing else to do.
Long ago, people ask me constantly, why did I get into this business? I had a pretty good career, I was doing well, and it was like, one, I got bored. 2, I wanted to have something fun to get into. The booze industry is the epitome of fun. As long as it's moderation, responsible, and things like that makes sense. But also what's interesting about the booze industry is, and I learned this from a mentor of mine a long time ago, when I first got out of college and, figured out what I sort of wanted to do. And a mentor said, look, business is easy, but you just got to find one that's recession-proof. And, the only thing that's recession-proof is death and taxes. Well, I didn't want to be an tax accountant, and I didn't want to be an undertaker, so I had to figure out what the hell am I going to do that's recession-proof. Well, booze.
Right.
People drink when they're happy, and they drink a lot more when they're not happy. And, it's hard to say that you wouldn't be smart to get into an industry where ebb and flows, whether good times or bad, you got something and people drink, and it's just a part of it. And so that was one of the things. Plus, living here in Savannah, as we kind of broached on it already, Savannah is a unique place where they, unlike most towns where crazy you put in the backyard and no one sees because you let the fences up. In Savannah, we put crazy out in the front porch and say, here you go.
Because everybody's got a crazy.
Yeah, you like it or don't, we don't care. And it was also that whole scenario of, for us, it was, a libacious town. I mean, this town is epitome. It's the largest historic district in the country, and throughout the entire historic district, we encourage you to get a drink from your bar and walk around with it. So, but what was interesting to me when we started Ghost Coast was there was no distilleries, no alcohol, no high spirits being manufactured in this part of the country, in part of the state, let alone the Southeast. The closest that you had to find was down in Florida or up in Charleston and things like that. So I was like, this is a no-brainer with this town too, especially.
Right.
And so we took the leap and we jumped on it. Had to do some heavy lifting before we even opened, bought the building, remodeled it, things like that. We had to get some laws changed in the state that hadn't been changed since Prohibition.
Hold that thought, because I want to get into that stuff.
Yeah.
On the golf stuff, because I remember we talked about that a lot when you were looking at getting into it. Was there, when you got involved with the sponsorship of the Corn Ferry event. Was it buy.com back then?
Yeah, it was buy.com back then.
Okay. Was it as a possible stepping stone to getting into a PGA Tour event? Because obviously the RBC is right across the river over in Hilton Head.
Yeah. The first,
because you when you get into that stuff and interviewing, when I had Tim Morgan on the show, the process for getting a U.S. Open, you don't just apply for a U.S. Open regardless of what your club is. You start usually at a smaller event, be it a senior, amateur, and then they see, okay, how did you handle that? And then you progress to maybe an amateur, the U.S. amateur, maybe, or pub links, maybe not as big a tier, and then you keep going up and they see how, and then, okay, you guys did great, you have the facility, now we'll give you either U.S. Amateur or Women's Open or the Big Open. Did you get the same sense that it was very similar with the sponsorship?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. It was, that
if you wouldn't have taken that, you would not ever, it's not
crawl, walk, run.
Yes, you can't just go from crawling to running sprints.
Right, no, and we needed to prove ourselves. We needed to understand the game, understand the situation, and what is expected of you. So, yeah, it was completely, long-term goal. We'd love to be associated with PGA on that level as well as RBC because it's right there. I mean, as the crow flies, we're, 17 miles?
Right.
And, Harbor Town, near and dear to me. My folks live on the 12th green. So, I've watched that tournament since I, didn't know what the hell golf was, let alone enjoying it like I do. So, yeah, that would be fun from the facet of, being a part of that tournament and being a host of the events leading up and during and then after, as well as, again, back to the whole involvement with our communities and feeling culturally involved with the society that we live in and trying to do better via charity work and things like that, which we do a lot of because we feel it's an obligation that we're here for the community to help better it. And that's what was kind of our creed, what Ghost Coast is all about.
Right.
So for us, it was, that was the stepping stones, and we hope to be at that level at some point. It just was one of those things that it's all about fit and timing, right?
Oh, timing is everything.
And so we felt we did a good job for those 2 years, but it was noticeable that it wasn't the right fit for us moving forward, and thus said, hey, thanks, but I think we're gonna dial back and put our focus elsewhere right now in regards to that, and we'll see where we go from there.
And in RBC, knowing that tournament and being there almost 30 years, the demographic that attends that is aligned right with what if for anyone that comes here to your distillery, it's basically the same clientele.
Yeah,
it's usually younger. For the most part, I mean, it has a wide demographic, but it's usually younger. They're looking to have fun. It's the state's biggest cocktail party, as they call it. It's a home run. There are some of the influencers that I've talked to over there that you and I have talked about having a VIP experience here.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They're in. They said just tell them when. And
well, we'll make that happen.
We'll make it happen
when we're ready. I mean, we're like I said, one of the two new states that we'll be walking into here in the next 30, 60 days is the state of South Carolina, which we're excited about. Besides just being over across the river and ties to, it's the right cohesiveness, in regards to neighborhood, like-minded people, need for good spirits that are made here locally.
For people, if you haven't been to this part of the country or part of the world, the Low Country, as it's called, what would you say is from probably just north of Charleston down to St. Simons?
Yeah,
right. That would be considered because upstate,
to the Florida border.
Upstate is the mountainous coming up the foothills of the Smoky Mountains and the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it has this mantra. It has a history of pirates. It has a history of rum running, all that stuff, and the laid backness. Right, everyone calls it the slow country.
Yeah, for sure. But on your point, the fun thing about this area that nobody knows about historically was this is where bootlegging and running booze, illegal booze, was first. This was the infancy of the Capones and that. In fact, Capone came down here to learn how bootlegging was during Prohibition, because Savannahans out in Tybee and between Tybee and Savannah, with all these barrier islands, was where booze was being run 24/7, 7 days a week during all forms of time for untaxed liquor, because it was just a cheap way. It was easy. You weren't getting caught, and we taught him how to do it, and then he took it to a next level.
Right.
But there's history in this town in Savannah about him coming and spending time here and his people to learn how to move illicit hooch. And we've been doing it since really the foundation of Savannah, and in late 1700s when Oglethorpe showed up.
Yeah, we go going back, and we're going to talk about that. I hope is that you used to have the movie when you guys did the tours, and the history of Savannah to go along to this conversation with pirates. Always liked this area because they could steal whatever they wanted to down in the Bahamas, and they'd bring it up this way.
Yep.
And with all the inlets and the rivers and everything, they could hide it, and the Royal Navy could never find them. Right. And Savannah, being one of the older cities back then, was a great spot. And the southernmost, Charleston's another 70 miles up the coast, but Savannah had the better cover. And it was more, let's just say, we didn't ask questions. Right, it's conducive to.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to make a buck, you're going to make a buck. Who cares?
Right.
It's not our job to go find out where this came from. Where Charleston, a little bit more high pollutant, they asked more questions. It was a little bit more sophisticated. Where we're
more
here.
More direct linkage to the king and,
right.
and the land proprietors. And Savannah's like, okay, whatever, we're going to do what the hell we want to do.
Right. And
which is, I watched that series, Black Sails. Did you watch that?
Yeah.
And it was very similar. It reminded me of NASA. Savannah and NASA reminded me a lot, where the Lord proprietor there was, okay, I'll let the pirates do what they want, and I'm going to take my cut, and just don't do anything stupid. And if you get caught, you don't mention my name, or you'll never do business here again.
Right.
I'm not saying Savannah was that drastic, although we'll never know. But it had the same kind of culture, where it was so far from the crown. And who's going to know?
Right.
And we're going to do the thing the way we want to do them, and to hell with doing them the way that you think we're supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to do it our own way.
What was some? You had mentioned learning a lot of things during the Corn Fair event. What was some of the stuff that you guys, whether it was about your own business, because that was still relatively, you guys were in your infancy.
Yeah.
And or the marketing aspect, or
learned how to be more than just one-dimensional. And what I mean by that is understanding from a marketing perspective there's different points of view, and how to learn to tap into those different points of view and not be everything to everybody, but at least offer something to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a connection and an ability to, drive some commonality that, one, allowed for your brand to grow and be interesting and develop into something more than what it starts out with. Because if you get that ability to tap into somebody's interest, you better take advantage of it.
right.
Because if you don't, you only get one shot. And, it's kind of funny. We've learned that there's a lot of guys and women in our industry, in the booze industry, that make really good product. I mean, it's not anymore where you have only a few people that are making good stuff. And
No,
the rest
it's
is
a booming industry.
Everybody is good. They're all chemical engineers, and they're all, they're really high-tech, high sophisticated, science-minded people. So where do you go? And so that's the whole thing, is making good hooch and good booze anymore. Gone are the days of just don't kill somebody and people will buy it, or
So it's not being made in a bathtub anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to be really good at it. So it doesn't matter how good it is anymore. Now it's taking it to the next level of, you got to make it good, and you got to know how the hell to market it, or it just gets lost in like a tree in a forest.
And it goes to that, and I'll use Apple as the example because they're so prevalent and everybody knows them. You've got to have both sides of the coin. So they obviously had the Wozniak in the early stage, and they had a lot of the brains that were doing things that nobody else in that engineering world was doing. And then you had the creative side with the job side and how to appeal emotionally to people to get them to buy into our vision. It's like, okay, Apple was selling the vision of we're going to change the world. Hence, they're all their advertising,
right?
And people bought into that because it could change the world with what they were, and they did what they were doing in multiple industries. And you're right to have that in today's society because everybody, science. I hate to use it because I think science is such an overblown word in today's society in any industry, whatever you're in, golf, liquor, health, politics. But you better have your product.
You got to be relative.
Yes.
And you got to be relative to that individual consumer which is crazy because there's so many different people out there and everyone's different. What is it that you connect with that individual that's different from the next person and the next person and the next person? Because that's the key. If you can be something to everybody, that allows for the opportunity for success. It doesn't guarantee it, but it at least gives you kind of that foot in the door because, let's face it, how many vodkas, how many whiskeys, how many bourbons, how many gins? There's a reason we make 29 different spirits because we got to adhere to everybody, and not everybody likes gin, not everybody likes vodka, not everybody likes rum. Go down the list. So, and it's kind of my deal when I'm out selling. It's like, you may not like everything that we make, but by God, I bet you're going to like something. And that's why we make so much of it. We make high-quality stuff. Why we constantly are in competitions being judged because we win medals and we're relevant. We make booze that's relevant, that people like. But that's where, kind of going back to your first question what did we learn from
the PGA,
to
being involved in their event and learning from them.
Yeah, being something to everybody. That's, you look at the PGA. And everybody that's associated with it, that players and that work in there and everything like that. They tap into the ability to be something to somebody that's interesting, that makes that person want to watch or want to be involved with it in some way or another.
They've gone from when you and I would grow up, golf was a country club sport.
Yeah.
There was no other, and it kind of appealed to that. And now it appeals. Obviously Tiger had a huge role in that, in bringing it to the masses, but the PGA Tour also took the initiative, I think, in recognizing that they needed to do something. They couldn't just be pigeonholed, and they were in a position to capitalize on that.
Oh, without a doubt. Look at now where every weekend it's not a handful of guys and women that can win the tournament. Mm-mm. It's anybody.
Anybody in the field.
Anybody, if they're just in the right mindset and just catch a break. It's I think what's interesting with the PGA and golf in general is any day is anybody's day.
Mm-hmm.
They wake up, the right mindset, had the right food, in the right zone, they can be a winner.
Right. Competition is so ridiculous.
Oh. And it's fun to watch and it's fun to be a part of.
I don't know who I was talking to or listening to, but and Bryson, the model of Bryson DeChambeau came up because he's obviously the one catching all the eyes with what, and he's in Como's house all the time. They're hitting balls and the whole deal, and the thought process, was it Sean Foley? I can't remember. Anyway, thought process was they think that golfers are going to go on this work to get on this multi-year tear because they're going to beat up their body so much in training and swing as fast as they can and the whole deal. And, that skews the shit out of your life. If you have a family, what's that do to your wife and kids? If you don't have a family, how unbalanced can you get before you snap? But they're going to go gung-ho, have a stretch of about 3 or 4 years where they do phenomenally well, and then just taper it back. Where golf has always been traditionally, okay, it's a career sport, and you don't peak and then jump backwards, but with the money that's out there nowadays, with what these guys and girls can win if they get on a run, like Inby Park on the ladies tour, and then you had DJ last year, the last couple of years on the PGA Tour. It's, but it'll be interesting. I mean, it is making the game very, very unique.
Well, I mean, I think it's much like, in some ways, I think you can say it's much like society as a whole, where it's a short blip in time that you make hay, and then
you make 70% of your yearly in a short period. I think, and that's an interesting point, because I think on average the PGA Tour, and I'm going to botch these numbers, but I'm just going to use an example. If a member's playing, let's say, 20 tournaments a year, they're going to make something stupid like 80% of their money in 3 events.
Right.
And then the rest are either missing cuts or they're coming near the 50th or 40th. And that it's still good money. Like Kevin Kisner said, well, why do you play in this tournament if you can't win? Well, they pay a lot of money for 20th.
Right. So, I mean, shit.
Which was a great answer.
Who would do that? Take a light weed and still bank pretty nice,
right,
and say, you know what, that wasn't too bad.
I'm going to get my FedEx Cup points.
Yeah.
I'm going to get these points. I'm going to get this amount of money. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, and you do that for 10 years between...
Oh, and the PGA Tour pension fund is... it's ridiculous.
Well, my whole point is do buckle down and play hard for 10 years from the age of 21 to 31, and then you're set. I mean, then you
go do something else.
Do something else. Do something that you want to do, not because you have to.
And then go play a few events here and there. Get your corporate.
I mean, why wouldn't you do that from a life, quality of life, and things like that?
You know why I think it is? Because I learned this in that. Okay, when I was in high school, I either played sports or I laid on a sofa and watched sports on TV, right? and then you say, oh, okay, I'm going to go play. I'm going to be a professional athlete. For me, it was playing pro golf. And then you get there and you realize, holy shit, these guys are actually
good,
really fucking good.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I got to work my ass off. And then you spend years working every single waking minute. You're like, all right, if I'm not working at this, then somebody else is and they're passing me. Well, you go through enough time of that, and you just can't turn it off.
No, it becomes part of you.
Part of you. So that'd be an interesting thing to see how some of these players, like a Bryson, who's going at it so hard, at some point they're either going to have to back off, and those around them who are their advisors are going to say, hey, Bryson, maybe for the next 3-6 months we take a step back or two. Otherwise, you're going to burn something. You're going to blow an engine.
Well, I mean, couldn't you say that was kind of what Tiger went through once he got hurt? And, he went for that time where he got hurt, but then he wouldn't admit it to himself. And he would, and it was
kept
other
trying
things.
To play through it.
Right, and it probably did more harm than good for him.
Right.
But, then he also, I think he accelerated his design program, started designing golf courses and things like that, because the brand of Tiger was so hot that, hey, if I can't go out and win something, I might as well do something that takes that psyche of who he is as a competitor.
He's got to put that energy into something.
Right. And so the key, I think, is going to be with these guys is, how long can you take advantage of your gift? Mm-hmm. And then how do you transition that gift because of the mental side that you learn? Because none of these guys, even Tiger didn't, he had to learn the mental side of the game. He had the skill set, and now that the gift, but he still had to learn the mental side over time. Now, he might have grasped onto it.
I think that was the greatest gift that his dad did, was he trained him on that mental side from an early age. So it's
right.
like it's built into Tiger's DNA.
Right. So that's the whole thing, is those guys got to learn how to take the mental grit that they learn by struggle on the tour or getting on the tour, and then have some success, and then have an injury or something that happens to them.
Some life event.
Right. That then, so what do I do so I don't go bonkers, or, Jennifer Capriati it out of the world, or things, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
where you just lose your
it.
shit. And then you've made such a catastrophic error, or it's cost you so much that you're toxic then, and you've wasted everything potentially that you had developed, harvested, cultured, things like that, where now I got to do something else, because ultimately Father Time regardless, is going to get you no matter how
get
good
caught
you
up
are.
with you anyway. I mean, there's that small section that those guys. DJ is such a great athlete, barring injury. Brooks is starting to experience injury. I don't know. His dad Bob was on the show. I didn't ask him, but I mean, you start to get injuries that repetitive motion and the training and the travel and everything else those guys go through. I mean, the torques on the body at what they're swinging at now it's going to be.
The human body wasn't designed.
Human body
for
wasn't
that.
designed to move in that way.
No,
and I don't care how many weights you lift or stretches you do or protein shakes you drink, it's going to break down at some point.
Father Time always wins.
And usually at that level, because in a lot of those guys, let's say they've been playing since they were 6 or 7, by the time they get to 30, 31, that's 23 years. It might not be every single day, but it was every single day for at least a decade.
Yeah.
And it's a wear and tear.
We've got a young lady who just became our assistant distiller, and she played golf for University of Kentucky. She's from Ireland. Zoe, married name Emerson, awesome girl. Had a knee injury in college, her sophomore, going under her junior year, and it basically ended her golf career. Mm-hmm. But so she's like, I got to do something because I'm not going to play golf anymore. And she was gifted at science, math, said, well, maybe, this.
Did science and math. Let me go into making booze.
I'm going to make booze because it's just a bunch of math. That's all. It's just adding and subtraction. So
it's chemistry.
Let's do it. And she's awesome. But she's kind of gone that gauntlet of, golf, played at a high level, mm-hmm. had an injury. What the hell am I going to do now? Kind of mentality. And now she's working for us, making great hooch, and God willing, we'll be able to keep her for a while. She's going to get probably somebody's going to give her a pile of money that I can't compete with her, and she's going to go on and do something else,
next level,
and be awesome. But that's what's cool about this thing too.
Take us through what was you did a couple years on the sponsorship. Take us through what a normal week would be like. So you got, I don't know, on the Corn Fair. I think they still have practice rounds Tuesday.
Yeah, practice is Tuesday.
Pro-ams are Monday and Wednesday.
Yes.
And then obviously tournaments Thursday through Sunday.
Right.
So what was the early? So you got the AMs in and everybody in early in the week.
Yeah, we'd put together care packages, which is basically everyone swag bag,
mm-hmm.
Product.
Are they getting a bottle of? Back then, orange vodka was your.
Well, what we were doing is we were doing 50 airplane bottles of 4 variants, putting that in there with some, some swag, koozies,
kind of like a test or a sampler pack,
right? And then put some very limited material, telling about the history of who we are, what we do, how we do it, why we're doing what we're doing, why we're involved with the tournament, and then going from there. Had a team in the pro-am, would play in that, cut up with the guys.
Mm-hmm.
1 year it was really good. A lot of interaction between the pro. Second year, not so much. He was really you could tell he didn't want to be there. He just was filling an obligation, checking the box, and that was it.
Going through the motions,
right?
I got to play with the sponsors.
I mean, I get it. Guys there to,
especially at that level, because they're slugging it out every week.
They're slugging it out every week. They're not making anything. They're
traveling all over the country.
Yeah, and they're not traveling nice.
They're driving. They're driving vans.
Yeah, so it's like I get it. And that's the last thing you want to do is be hanging around a bunch of damn drunk distillers on the 5th hole.
Keeping you out until 4 in the morning.
Yeah, it's like, all right.
In the Sin City.
After the 3rd hole, we've lost it. So we're like, all right, take a shot before we hit every stroke. And by the time you hit the 14th hole, you could barely see. But, that's what we do. We're kind of fun. It's the deal. And so, kiddingly, but that's what we do. And so we go through that, and then the tournament cranks up. That's when it gets serious. Thursday morning, we've got to be in all the hospitality tents. We're offering, batch cocktails of all 4 variants of booze.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be unique. They got to be fresh. They got to be, our big stick here is everything that we make is fresh, no preservatives, nothing like that. Let's face it.
It's healthy drinking.
Healthy, yeah, if you can call that. I mean, booze is not healthy to the human being. Even
though it's made out of
podcasters alcohol is not the best thing for your body. Come on.
You can't use corn or rye as well, I ate a vegetable today.
It's not a fruit,
Right.
for sure. But, so we try to make it as best we can, but we also, our program here at the distillery is craft cocktail bar. You're not going to get anything anywhere else in the country, I guarantee you, what we do here.
Mm-hmm.
So we bring that, put it on the road, put it at the golf course, in the hospitality booth. So the special VIPs and sponsor supporters of the tournament get the best that they can get. And that's what the PGA really, in essence, is trying to offer. The best that you can give to their supporters, and we're part of that conduit.
Yeah, their VIPs are coming in. And
that's right.
So it was a duality. I mean, you're providing the product, but you're also getting access to a whole new slew of people who might
not even know who we were.
Right.
One of the things that's so crazy with what we do is, you go to a liquor store, for example, or just go to a bar and look at everything on the back bar. And, holy mackerel, there's so much there to offer of what it is, what you're offering. So how do you differentiate yourself?
Oh, how many times do I send you a text and say, hey, I'm at this liquor store. There's 400 different bourbons to pick from. What do I pick? I have no idea.
Yeah, and it's like
trying to pick a golf ball.
Right. I mean, it's really, to that point, it gets down to the side of, what's for whiskey or bourbon, what's the mash bill? How heavy in corn? What other cereal grains are involved? How long are they aging? All these aspects that change the profile of what it is. And so that's the collective mindset that why we did what we did is to open ourselves up as a company and as a product to people that would normally not see us on the shelves because, one, they're fundamental locked into a certain brand or product.
Brand loyalty, yeah.
And so they walk in and, it's everything else is white noise, basically, and they just know where to go, where it is on the shelf, grab it, put it in their cart, and go, when we could all go to shopping centers and spend time in stores. And now, with COVID and things like that, now the craziness is everything's being ordered online and either delivered to your house or you go pick it up outside and do curbside delivery, which is another crazy mindset that is out there, but it's here to stay. I guarantee you that.
Who were some of the players that might have taken you up on any offers to sample a little more than they? Well, I don't even want to throw any of the guys under the bus like that. Who were some of the guys that you got to meet? Because that was a couple years ago that might be more of a household name now. Were there any?
There weren't any that we got to meet, because I tell you what.
You were more behind the scenes getting.
We were all more behind the scenes, but also those guys, they were serious. They weren't, it wasn't, some had electric personalities and things like that, but the one thing that they didn't deviate from, all of them, they were athletes, and they were there for a purpose. They were tunnel, laser-focused tunnel vision on, I'm playing golf, I've got to better myself from last week, from yesterday, from last swing to where we are right now. And they weren't, it wasn't like, here, got a flask, have a shot between strokes, things like that. Like your buddies on Saturdays or Sundays, or hell, you and I going out, things like that. I mean, I was amazed at their professionalism. Not that I was amazed. It's not that I would have thought anything if, but you could tell this was their profession and they were going to do it. It's just much like what we do when we make a spirit or design, and market a label and things like that. We know what we're doing and what we're going to do, and by God, we go do it.
Right.
And then, the fun is later.
Let's talk about the business itself as we're talking about that. That's the profession and so on. Well, for started, you got, what did you say, 29 different
29 different spirits.
What's the most popular?
Okay, so define popular, because there's pockets of uniqueness.
I'll tell you that this one was pretty. What was this one?
Oh, that's the Time Traveler.
All right, before we even get into because this thing was awesome.
So that is that's the booziest of boozy drinks that we have.
Doesn't even taste it.
No. And that's what's scary.
It's like a Long Island iced tea. You don't even taste.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got our Master Straight Bourbon in that, which is 86 proof. You got our Chartreuse Herbal Bitters, which is 90 proof. And you got our Cherry Almond Liqueur, which is 60 proof. Collectively, when you put it in a glass with a ice cube, it's like 78% alcohol. It's all alcohol. There's nothing in it other than alcohol. And the running joke is, well, the name is Time Traveler for a reason. You can't drink more than 4 of those without passing out or just blacking out. So no more for you. But, and believe me, we've tried. I'm trying to hit number 5, and I just can't hit it yet.
Can't get there.
No. I mean, I wake up on the couch at 3 a.m. saying, what the hell just happened to me?
Hey, with all that proof, you can just say, hey, look, I'm killing all the bad bacteria in my gut.
Well, I'm convinced that's why I've gone through so far, knock on wood, no COVID in this guy.
You're getting his best shot at killing all that.
It may get in my system, and then it just says, oh, get the hell out.
We're done.
Yeah. But that's kind of the fun of it. Favorite for sure is I'm really proud of our Master Straight Bourbon. It's a 4-year-old bourbon that's actually 4 different bourbons that we blend to make one. Mm-hmm. And they're 4 distinct mash bills. We have some tradition in there in regards to kind of tip the hat to Jimmy Russell of Wild Turkey. We take the 4 Roses mantra of taking different mash bills and blending them to make a better drink, better liquid. But Jimmy Russell, he's kind of a mentor of mine. That guy, he's forgotten more than I'll ever learn about bourbon. But he just is, I spent some time with him in Louisville, Kentucky, and he's like, Chris, bourbon's meant to be consumed. Don't let it age more than 7 years, and if you follow by that, you'll do well. Which he's right. Some of this stuff that ages for 20, 25, 30 years, it hits a point where it peaks out and then it starts to deteriorate, and don't ever let it get past that point. But that being said, our Master Straight Bourbon, it's 4 different mash bills, 2 entrenched in tradition. And all we do is we change out a rye cereal grain with a wheat, and then we went a little funky with 2 other mash bills that we use a saison yeast that we took from making beer, mm-hmm. and it adds some citrus notes that you don't get in a typical bourbon. So when you're tasting it and age it right and do all the right things that we think we're doing, I mean, it just came back from San Francisco last year with a double platinum medal to it, which we were pretty excited about because we didn't think it was going to be that good. That it's still too young, but it blew us away. And it's just getting better. But that kind of gives us that's kind of the peak, because we made this place to be a whiskey and a bourbon manufacturer, and then kind of morphed it with what state laws started to do, but also because we liked what we were doing from a cocktail room bar mm-hmm. mantra, and the laws of state of Georgia don't allow us to bring in outside liquid that's got alcohol in it.
You can sell your own. You just can't sell.
We can't sell anybody else, and we can't serve it. So if we're going to serve it, we got to make it here. Mm-hmm. And so we make everything that makes us and allows us to be a really crazy cocktail bar.
Was that the deciding factor in all the other things that you have? All the I don't know what's the right word.
All the variants,
the mixtures, like the bitter. You guys make your own bitters.
We make our own bitters.
You make your own everything.
Yeah, we make everything from scratch. It really kind of broadened from that whole concept of we want to be a really crazy craft cocktail bar where flavor and taste is just something that we haven't figured out yet. So we're constantly playing, and it's behind the bar and back in productions, we call it the mad scientist room because we're always tweaking with stuff and always trying to make things better.
There's got to be some stories where you guys are back there tasting, tweaking, and next thing you know, you're tasting, and oh shit, I can't walk in a straight line.
Oh yeah,
anymore.
there's been I mean, that church pew you're sitting on, I've slept there many a nights because I couldn't make it home because we were screwing with shit. I mean, some of our failures, which is a lot. We tried to make a pecan whiskey, Georgia pecans.
Right.
After 78 different variations, we said enough, and we couldn't do it. Not to the point where we were like, okay, this is good. We want to put this out there. It was to the point where like, this sucks, and it would be a travesty to ruin our reputation of putting something out there just because we had gone this length.
Because you want to be the first.
Right. And so it's like, nah, not going to do it because we just can't be done, or we can't do it. So, I'm sure we'll get crazy someday and try to do it again. Hopefully we'll stop halfway through it to make it right because, the only way you can do it is with chemicals and things that aren't natural.
And that goes against...
That goes exactly against everything that's in all of our products is all natural. It's all it's not derived from anything.
In the early days, you guys relied heavily on your vodka. And the orange vodka was extremely popular.
Yeah.
What was you had told me one time, I think you guys filter it 5 times. Is that right?
We distill it.
Distill it.
It's distilled over 7 times, and then it's filtered, I want to say, over a dozen times before it's ready.
So that just gets out more of the impurities.
Right.
It's a cleaner.
It's a cleaner
vodka.
booze. Yeah. And then we use a Seville orange extract that gives it that unique, bitter, not sweet, lots of aroma, great taste on the back of your tongue, and it just is. It's kind of the
because you can drink that. On the rock. Even if you're not a vodka person, you can drink that on the rocks or club soda was the preferred, wasn't it?
Right.
That's
yeah. I'd like to think that all of our spirits, excluding our Daisy Mays, which is 190 proof, and really that's it. Everything else is very non-offensive, either neat or on the rocks, and you'll enjoy it. So it makes it fun.
Let's go. So now that we're into the distillery part of it, and so let's go circle back and talk about the history of Savannah and the liquor biz, because when you guys started, you had the tour, which
right.
because of COVID and some other, it worked its way out.
Right.
But the first part of the tour, which was awesome, was the movie.
Yeah.
Which gave a history. Was a 12 or 15 minute history of the liquor in Savannah.
13 minutes 10 seconds of Savannah history from the late 1600s till modern day.
From like a trading post.
Yeah, Mary Musgrove.
Mary Musgrove.
First woman. She was half Sioux, half Creek Indian, half English, from her parents who came over from England in the middle 1600s, and her father married a Indian woman. They had Mary, and she grew up part of this. He was a trapper. He was a frontiers guy and a trader with the pirates and things like that. And then she grew into the family business. Then started dealing with rum. Pirates
coming up from the Caribbean.
Right. In fact, true story. A few years ago, I think it was like 8-9 years ago, they were excavating at the Georgia port, which is just right, a block away from us. And they got like 6,000 acres there for growth and things like that. And they were excavating this area and found her original cabin that burned down in late 1600s, right before the 1700s. And lo and behold, what they find in the basement: clay jugs of rum that didn't burn up. That I don't know what happened to them, but I've been told that there was still liquid in them. It was
you can't
crazy.
Drink that, can you? Even if
I would try, probably. I doubt it. Just depends on how sealed it was and things like that. If it's above 30% alcohol, there's no bacteria growing in that. So, and who knows? 400-year-old
I wonder
rum
what they
probably
did with
tastes
it.
pretty good.
Yeah, I wonder what they did with it.
It's probably in archive somewhere in state history. I mean, so Mary was the first, booze. She would trade it with frontiermen and pirates and things like that, and it was a commodity. And then, and then Oglethorpe, then the Spanish showed up. They worked deals with the Indians here and Chippewas and all that. And then, that, as all the, as history has proven, that any deal that the Indians make with somebody tries to screw them, and they chase them off. And so then the British came 100 years later after the Spanish were gone. And Oglethorpe showed up here, and, this is the debtors' colony. And, immediately people wanted to drink, and he forbid it. There was only 4 rules that Oglethorpe had when he came to Savannah. No liquor, no lawyers, no Catholics, and and no slaves. And so the whole thing is debtors from England brought over here, agricultural scenario, send back to, grow crops, things like that.
Was that around the era, or was that after the era? Because Georgia was a penal colony, right, for the English-Irish War.
The penal colony was for debtors.
Okay.
Oglethorpe, his whole reason for signing up for this whole gig was he saw one of his dearest friends die in prison because he made some bad choices on some investments, and his affluent friend went broke, family went broke, he died in prison. He's like, there's got to be a better way, because these are good people. Just because they make bad decisions or get caught up.
Because Savannah's the second biggest St. Patrick's Day in the country, or third?
Second.
Okay, which is huge when you consider New York, Chicago, New Orleans, and I don't know, there's Boston.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand why. And
well, the
Irish were here.
Irish came here. They weren't allowed when Oglethorpe came over. I mean, the Irish didn't show up here until late 1700s. So
they were really imprisoned here, right?
Well, not the Irish.
Not the Irish. Okay.
The Irish came over after the imprisonment was the English, and that to get out of jail and to pay your debt off, basically, and then be able to go back to
God, could you imagine back then coming from England and they stick you in southeast Georgia, and if you came at the wrong time of year, I mean, you go from nothing over 60 degrees to now it's 110 index.
They died all the time. I mean, it was horrible. There's no cakewalk, but that was how Savannah was founded and made. And then late 1700s, potato famine, 1800s. That's when the Irish really started showing up here.
Yeah, because you look, Savannah, second biggest St. Patrick. Then you got Dublin, Georgia.
Yep.
You got all these Irish things throughout Georgia. And,
yep.
People don't even pay attention anymore. I bring it up to them all the time.
The city of Wexford, at one point in its history, right when the potato famine was going on in the 1800s, had the largest export of their citizens to Savannah.
Wow.
Largest, as well as the largest city of immigrants from Ireland were from Wexford, Ireland, to Savannah, Georgia.
What was the draw for the Irish?
It was because of the port, and it was because of the agriculture, and it was because of the opportunity that they had.
Okay, so New York, where they were basically coming off the boat and getting put in the military, here they had come off the boat and they could have opportunity to go do something.
They could be a farmer.
Right.
Or they could work in the port, because Wexford is a port city. It's very similar to Savannah in regards to environment, humidity, things like that. It's not as warm, but still a lot of similarities. And so they would come over, and it was Wexford 2.0.
Okay.
And so that was the draw. And at one point, I think in the 1800s, they had over 150,000 people leave Wexford to come to here and displace themselves through South Georgia. And so it was really interesting. Had the opportunity to go over there 2 years ago and trying to develop a relationship to go into the EU with Ghost Coast products and things like that. Met some great people. It was just timing couldn't have been worse with tariffs and change of political parties and things like that. So where it just kind of we'll have to see where it go. But it was great. I really got the outside history of where and how Savannah developed as the city is today. The influence, it was really cool. But it's for another time.
You had told me a couple of times how Savannah in particular, this area of the country with the type of weather it has and the humidity and the fluctuation, that it's ideal for we'll call it brewing spirits.
Yeah, I mean, well, really, it's distillation's great, but it's the key here, especially with aged spirits. Mm-hmm. Putting anything in a barrel and being in our environment here in Low Country, South Georgia, on the coast, couldn't be better. I mean, like today and yesterday. But we had 75, almost 80 degrees yesterday,
and today rainy, and it was humid.
Yeah, and today
55.
we're 55 and low humidity. You know what it's called.
Those barrels have got to be flexing, and purging, and absorbing.
Yep, it's what they call barrel respiration. You know, when it gets hot, they expand. When it gets cold, they contract. Mm-hmm. And so, best way to describe it is, your kitchen sponge. You squeeze it and you let it go. It sucks in moisture, puts out moisture. It's the same thing a barrel does, and that's what you want, because what happens is that fluid that you put in that barrel, it gets, especially if you char the inside of it, that char is like a filter. So that liquid goes inside that wood. The esters and that sap of that wood, they have sugar molecules that attach to those liquids, and add and subtract and take out and add and change the flavor profile of that spirit in the barrel, which then ultimately ages it to a level that you want. And that's where Savannah is that little known secret of the weather that we go through in a year, and the ebb and flow, humidity, heat, cool, everything, moisture, being along Big River as well as the ocean, it all affects it. Mm-hmm. And we're noticing it in our whiskeys and our bourbons, that we're fast tracking the aging process, where a 3 and 4 year old whiskey and bourbon tastes like an 7 and 8 year old whiskey and bourbon.
Was that difficult to learn? Even though you have the mad scientists back there in the back room, they have to.
It was a theory that we had before we started doing it. That's why we did it here. We thought the weather had such an influence on aged spirits that we're going to see something unique that nowhere else in the country experiences. Mm-hmm. You go down to Florida, they have the same thing, but they don't have the cold. You go up north in North Carolina and Tennessee, and they don't have the heat and the humidity levels that we do here. It just is this little pocket of kind of craziness that happens that dictate that, like we talked about earlier, how do we differentiate ourselves from everybody else?
Well, the weather is going to.
The weather does it for us.
How does Kentucky differ in that they're obviously worldwide, or world renowned for their bourbons?
Just because they've been doing it for longer than anybody else. I mean, Kentucky was that first real big influx of Scotch and Irish that were immigrating.
They've been doing it for.
That been doing it back
decades.
In their homeland, and they migrated to the U.S. and they ended up in Kentucky, where it was agrarian, and you have a bumper crop of corn and rye and wheat. Well, you're not going to let it go bad. So what you're going to do is you're going to make booze in the wintertime. And then they put it on a ship, goes down to New Orleans in a barrel, takes some time, darkens in color, all that stuff.
It hits the heat and the humidity.
Yep.
And the salt air and
in the barrel, and it changes the dynamics of it.
How do you go on your barrel selection? Do you go about, because you have a barrel room for everybody that might not have ever taken the tour, if you haven't gotten here yet. You guys have your own barrel room.
Yep.
How do you go about selecting what wood you're going to use for your barrels? Or that's got to be a whole science into itself, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it's also dictated by the federal government. There's categories. Yeah. I mean, we're not the third most regulated industry in the country for a reason. They get their taxes from us 5 times during our start to finish of booze.
Jesus.
I mean, it's crazy. But there's also classifications that alcohol is allowed to be called a whiskey or allowed to be called a bourbon or allowed to be called this or allowed to be called that. And part of those classifications are tied into what you can and cannot use in materials as a barrel and things like that. For example, all of our barrels are driven off of the bourbon classification. Has to be American white oak, can be charred from 0 to 5, and has to be brand new. So that kind of starts the process with us. We get brand new American white oak barrels that are charred to level 3, and we fill them up with our bourbon mash bills, which has to be 51% corn and has to be aged in those barrels specifically to be called bourbon. And then there's classifications of different bourbons from that, from bonded bourbon to straight bourbon to all that. These classifications that add on to the niche of it. So then once we remove that liquid from those barrels, then they either become a whiskey barrel for us, or they become a rum barrel for us, or they become...
This is after you extract the bourbon out.
Right.
Okay.
And then they can become an agave barrel for us that we use for... Agave is the base spirit, the base ingredient for what you call tequila, but we can't call it tequila because we're not in the tequila region of Mexico.
Have you had any wine companies come to you? Because hasn't that become a big thing, that using bourbon barrels to age wine?
Yeah, I mean, we actually work with a company that buys all of our barrels from us when we're ready to let them go. Mm-hmm. And they either send them to breweries, they send them to wineries, or they send them back over to Scotland and Ireland, where they repurpose the barrels and use them for aging Scotch and Irish whiskey.
Huh.
So it's kind of cool. I mean, it's really that whole perspective of recycling at its finest. I mean, and that may be, we're working on 4-year-old barrels right now on bourbon, and then we may keep them an extra 2 years to go through our whiskey and our rum program, and some of those may get fed off into our agave program, which our Raspado is aged 17 months in it. So we've got stuff in the works like that.
So you it's like recycling. It's like green at its finest. You're using it you age it in the bourbon, then
right.
You use it in the whiskey, and then you use it in something else,
right.
and it just adds to the
right,
flavor.
Because basically every time you put a liquid in there, whatever was in there before is still in that wood, mm-hmm. and now you've imparted that flavor, and then you dump it, and now you've got, like, for example, our bourbon, we dump that. Now you got some bourbon flavoring in that wood. We put a whiskey in there, different mash bill. Now you got bourbon and a whiskey flavor in that wood, and you put a rum in there. And now you've got 3 different flavors in there, and then put an agave in there. And then it's like, holy shit, what the hell's going on? It's a mutt all together, but it creates
this flavor that you can't get anywhere else.
That's right. And so it's uniqueness. So
is that an industry thing, or is that something that
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's an industry thing. It's just, it's constant tweaking. One of the big things right now is taking bourbon, aging it in American white oak, and then they'll double barrel it, and they'll take it out of that bourbon barrel, and then they'll finish it in like a sherry cast, where you'll get these sweeter wine notes mm-hmm. to complement what's going on with that particular mash bill bourbon.
God, it's no wonder that there's so many different bourbons in the liquor store. There's hundreds of them.
You could go crazy on just configuration difference, and it's and then what are you doing at proof that you put it in that barrel? Is it we proof everything that we do at 110, but you can go up to 125 and put it in a barrel, and it still can be called bourbon. And so it's it's dealer's choice of what you want to do.
What's the difference? Well, let me ask you this question first. The difference between a rye and a corn, mm-hmm. Because there's rye and corn bourbons.
Correct.
I drink them. I don't know the difference. So kind of explain for others out there who are...
So the delineation of bourbon is it has to be 51% corn, and it has to be aged in a brand new American white oak barrel.
Okay.
So it's pretty broad spectrum, really, mm-hmm. if you think about it. Got my 51% corn in the mash bill. All right. So now I can put wheat in it. I can put rye, any cereal game, sorghum, anything. Mm-hmm. What kind of flavors am I looking for? Rye typically is a spicier cereal grain. You're going to get a lot of pepper, a lot of fire, a lot of these scenarios. Where wheat, lots of sugar, soft notes, sweeter. You blend all this, and then you start playing with your mash bills, and your corn's going to be sweet because corn is sweet. It's what it is. Wheat adds a little drier factor to it, not as sweet, but a different sweet. Or you put rye, which is a very spicy node, so you kind of balance your sweet and spice to it there, and so you start to play from those aspects. And then how does it interact with the wood that you choose and the charring of the barrel, which is basically just what kind of layer of filtration do you have, because charcoal is a natural filtration
filter, right? Yeah.
Right. So then
Bear Grylls on what's that show he has where he says if you want to filter water, take your
coals,
your embers,
yeah,
and pull up a hunk of grass,
right,
and put them all together in a bottle and just pour your water through them. By the time it gets to the bottom, you're ready to drink it.
Right. I mean, it might be a little silty in that, but I mean, you're healthy. You're at least not going to get any kind of Giardia or anything like that. But yeah, so I mean, it's kind of crazy. And then the other side of the whole science of it is you distill all that. You distill that mash bill, and you got a pretty good idea when it comes out of the still after you run that high wine of what it's going to taste like. 80% of it is going to be close to what it's going to taste like, and then that 20% change is what happens in that barrel. The wood's been cured, but it's still the sap in the wood has sugars that add or detract from how they interact with that juice. So I mean, that's the 20% of you don't know what's going to happen until it happens, and it's just like, okay, is it good? Maybe, or maybe not.
That girl that you mentioned earlier that played at Kentucky, I mean, all the mad scientists, they got to have a blast back there, because the structure of developing and coming up with spirits, be it bourbon or vodka, fill in the blank, and then the ability to have the creative side of, okay, if we tweak it this way, here's what we think will happen, but let's try it and find out. So they're tickling both of their sides of the brain.
What's crazy is we got some equipment back there that takes us down to like the molecular side, where you actually can see what the proteins and look like and how they interact with each other, positive, negative ions, and all that. So it gets really technical, more so than I could ever speak of educational.
That's the nerd stuff.
That's the nerd stuff, but it's also there's a path or a map kind of to what do you want, how do you want it to taste, because you can look at it from the molecular side and have an idea of what's the end result going to be, because how the protons and neutrons match up and develop that taste profile.
When did all of this, when did the scientific side of it get so involved?
I want to say the science side of it has been that way from the get-go. It's just we've had cooler tools to figure it out, and look at it. But I think when the resurgence of whiskey and bourbon started in the 80s, that's when it really started, because you had chemical engineers saying, wait a minute, this is just chemistry. We can figure this out and design it to make it better. And that's when, whiskey and bourbon actually really started taking on, because they're actually making better juice, or they started to make better juice at that point in time, because they treated it more than backwoods hooch making to a real science. And let's get some guys with some degrees and some bases in science, instead of what my great granddaddy taught me: throw this in, throw that in, throw a bunch of sugar in, let it ferment, and then let's cook it off and cut it off. What's great about what we do is there is science that makes it better, but there also the equalizer that I think is so much fun is it's all about your palate and all about how you make cuts from, you hear heads, hearts, and tails. Well, that's legit. I mean, you can have the best scientific background and degree, but if you have a horrible, shitty tongue and can't taste shit,
you got to figure out
it'll
what
be
people
bad.
want.
Yeah, and so that's where the science and tradition come together, and it makes this, kind of moment. And there you go. And that's the beauty of it. And that's where I think it's old school and new school. They have to come together. They just can't one can't override the other. And
no,
I think
it's a marriage.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so much. That's what makes it the best.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can never get too smart to override taste. And
that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
If people don't like the taste, then they're not going to.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter how chemically or molecularly superior the scientists say it is. The consumer's like, yeah, it tastes like shit.
It tastes like shit.
It's going to taste like shit.
Yeah, and that's why you've got icons like Jimmy Russell, Booker No, God rest his soul. Those guys understood the science, but they also trusted their palates and knew what was good and what wasn't good, and how quickly it could change from good to bad. And once bad got into something, it made it all bad, whether it was one drop or none.
Right. Yeah, it's like I watch a lot of documentaries, rock and roll type stuff, Sunset Boulevard, that whole rock and roll era through the late 50s through probably the mid to late 80s. And the producers, you had these musical geniuses, right? From the Mamas and the Papas and up to the Doors and, the whole litany of, anyone could throw out any 10 bands and they'd be unbelievable. But in large part, the producer, once they got in the studio, would have to. I mean, those people would have to have the ear to be able to tell you what was going to be good. And
right.
Even though people say you're out of your mind, okay, let's put it out there. And then there's another platinum album.
Well, what? Phil Spector just passed away, 81, who was the wall of sound.
Yep.
And changed the dynamic of producing and recording music in our age.
Right.
And what that kind of set it stepped the game up, so to say, and then changed the level of making music. Well, that's the same thing with booze.
With what you guys are able to do, given the location, meaning the temperature and the ideal circumstance there, and the group that you have that's coming up with these tastes and these flavors and these concoctions, are you guys doing any shake-up in the industry? Because you're winning a lot of awards. Are other long-time distilleries looking at you guys and saying, kind of scratching their head and saying, what the hell are they doing? They've been around here for 4 years, and they're coming in and winning these double platinum awards. We're sitting here 10, 20, 30 years in the business, and they're coming in and kicking our ass.
Well, you know me well enough to know I love to poke the bear.
Right. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
And, we poke the bear a lot. And we're some bigger named organizations that have us on their crosshairs on us and their radar. And they don't like what we're doing because, frankly, we're doing it better than they are.
Mm-hmm.
They've got deeper pockets and bigger marketing departments and sales departments, but we're chipping away, and it's like, yeah, we're doing this and we're doing it better than you are, and we're making something that competes with you week in, week out. And oh, by the way, how much market share did you lose to us because we went in and had someone sit down and actually take the time to do a comparison? Some of the funniest things that we say in our board meetings with our group is take the Pepsi challenge. And we go in and say, take the Ghost Coast challenge. Taste this compared to this with maybe a company called Sazerac or Chartreuse. And they're like, holy shit. Yeah. Try this.
Told you so.
Yeah. And we've got some people that pay attention to us, Bacardi. And then they don't like what we're doing, which is great because that's competition, right? That's what we're doing this for, just for fun.
Yeah, it's like that. They look at you like, okay, pick X company that's been around for 60, 70 years. And if Y company that's been around for an equal amount of time, if they're doing something, they might look and, okay, they're going off onto this tangent, and we don't care because we're not in that space. But when this small, meaning comparatively speaking to the big players that are out there that have been there 100 years plus, and then you guys come along at 4 years, and small in relationship to them out of this smaller town, Savannah, and now it's like, you're turning heads and winning awards, they start thinking, what the hell's going on here? They're not supposed to do that. So yeah, it's cool to see you guys continue to win these awards, and you got to. I'll have all your your social media handles in there so everybody can follow you guys, but follow them and look at the amount of awards that you guys are winning. Not just like at random. You guys are winning consistently at various places like San Francisco and LA. And
I mean, we're not. It's like
you're winning in big markets.
Yeah, we're not going to Guyton and playing with people that
just to say, hey, we won this award.
Right. No. I mean, we go to legit operations and legit contests because it just adds and helps add credibility to what we're doing, and it more than anything, it feeds our desire to be better, because we learn more from failure than we do from success, because we get, what's nice is these contests that we get into, we get to see the scoring decks of what the judges say about that our particular spirit that we put in. And so then it drives us to, we get offensive, we get pissed off. We're like, all right, okay, you didn't like that because it was too notey in coriander or cinnamon. Fine, we'll go tweak the recipe, because that's the beauty of it. We're small enough that we're not like a big barge that you can't really move.
Where they're doing thousands and tens of thousands of bottles, and for them to change it is a halt to production.
Yeah, we have the ability to tweak and be maneuverable and keep editing and evolving, which is great.
I putter fit and taught one of the guys who was on the original recipe team for Grey Goose.
Yep.
And this had to be 15 years ago, 12 years ago. And I asked him, he goes, you drink Grey Goose? Oh, and of course, this was well before you guys got into business. Grey Goose was my go-to. And I said, yeah. He goes, what do you think of it? I said, well, it tastes a little different. He said, yeah, well, when we sold, the guy who owned us sold it, they sold the company for $1 billion. Yeah. He said, when a company pays $1 billion for something, they got to cut corners. He said, tasting it, I know that they've had to cut back on some stuff.
Yep.
So it's not the original.
Right. And that's part of it. It's big companies can make things different and override those changes because 1% of the consumers out there can taste the difference, and the rest, as long as you keep it somewhat similar, they're never going to know.
And like you said, they're going in the liquor store, they're going through their routine, they know where their stuff is, they grab up the shelf, they pay, and they go home and they drink.
Yep.
And if it tastes a little different, they might say, oh, I got allergies right this time of year. Maybe it's the whatever juice or whatever I'm mixing it with.
Yeah.
I went to Schweppes instead of club soda, whatever. They're going to rationalize the decision.
Yep.
And never pay attention to until somebody brings it up. Well, the recipe has changed. Yeah, I tasted something different.
Yeah, and that's the little secret of what they call blending, where if they're going to change it from one spectrum to the other, they'll go through 3 or 4 or 5 different avenues
over the course
of that change. So it's not so, wait a minute, what the hell is this? To where then, just like you said, you put it eloquently. It's like, maybe it's the tonic, or maybe it's the orange juice, or maybe it's the juice that's different. Couldn't be the vodka because the label looks the same and the bottle.
Everything else is the same.
Right.
That's got to be a scary thing. Coke being the example. When they went to the new Coke and they went to this, and now they circled all the way back to, hey, here's original Coke. I'm glad I'm not having to make those decisions to you in order to and that's at a stratospheric level that is, almost not unprecedented, but very few get to that level. It's like, okay, how do you continue to grow? But everybody likes what you have. That's a very difficult.
I bet you, if you were able to get into Coke's archives, you would see they didn't blend out the new Coke slow enough, because they probably were, like every big company is, in some point of their of their life cycle is a little bit more arrogant than anything, and they're we just change it. The people will find they'll love it.
They won't know the difference.
They won't know the difference. They'll love it because they love us.
And they get a backlash on it.
Right?
Wasn't it like there's only 3 people in the world who know the recipe for the Coke or something stupid like that?
I think that's correct. I think it's either I know,
and it's kind of like a president, vice president, that they can never be on the same airplane. They can never be in the same building.
Right.
They guard that exceptionally well.
My dad worked for PepsiCo years ago, like 20, 30 years ago. And he worked for a trucking company that was owned by PepsiCo, but he would go to board meetings and things like that. And that was like they had 3 guys in the company for Pepsi that controlled the syrup and knew exactly what was in the syrup. And they were never in the same place at the same time, same plane, anything like that, because the risk of that knowledge being lost
was too great.
And they only had it written down one place, just before computers and things like that. And it was all, tied in this vault somewhere in the mountaintop of a volcano, under the ocean kind of deal. And that was it. But he would tell me about board meetings that he would go to, and, there'd be one guy that was just sitting there with a briefcase because that was his job to walk in, and he would go around to the 10 or 12 different Pepsi plants that made the actual Pepsi, and he would go in and, test everything, water levels and things like that, and then the last thing he'd get out his syringe and drop a couple drops of whatever that was, and there's your Pepsi.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Let me ask you real quick, and this, for some people who are listening who are bourbon aficionados, this is going to be like they're going to roll their eyes, but for some who aren't, that are golf fanatics and they're getting into the bourbon craze, the difference between the classification of a whiskey and a bourbon, it's relatively simple, I think, because you've explained it to me a few times.
It's what was it barreled in, and how long it was barreled.
The white oak, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be in the white oak for the bourbon.
But also, from the delineation between a whiskey and a bourbon is how much corn was in the mash bill, the recipe.
Okay.
So if it wasn't 51% corn, they can't call it bourbon. But they can call it whiskey.
No matter how long the age is.
No matter how long it ages. It's got to be 51% of all the cereal grains to be classified as a bourbon. On top of, a lot of whiskeys are aged at above 126 proof. So,
for what reason?
Because of volume. Because if you don't, you're limiting how much you can make if you're leaving it under that 126 proof. So you don't get to run it out as long. The economies of scales change.
Right.
So that's the difference, as well as what other grains are you using that you can call it a whiskey or can't call it a whiskey and call it a bourbon. And then aging significance, how long you age it, what you age it in, those scenarios. Like if you could take a bourbon, but if you put it in certain woods, you can't call it a bourbon anymore, but it's still a whiskey.
Really?
Yeah, it's still a whiskey.
So it loses
every bourbon is a whiskey.
Its name.
Yeah, every bourbon is a whiskey, but not every whiskey is a bourbon. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. So that's just some general knowledge out there for some of you who are listening. If you're at the 19th hole and hey, you want a trivia question, anyone can use that one. So
yeah,
throw it out to your fellow golfers.
Some
What's
of
the difference between bourbon and whiskey?
Some of the more fun ones is like, why is Jack Daniel's not a bourbon? Because it's got a mash bill of 51% corn. You know the reason?
No. Age?
It's filtered through charcoal before it's bottled. Can't do that with bourbon.
It's got to stay in the barrel and go right to
the only
production.
Filtration that you can touch that touches charcoal is in the barrel. What they'll do is they'll dump it out of the barrel and then they'll go through one more filtration process, which cancels it out.
And they don't give a shit because they have that market cornered.
They're a Tennessee whiskey. They're not a Kentucky bourbon. They don't want to.
They never advertise.
They'd rather be their own. They've segmented off.
They said, this is our space, we're going to own it.
Right.
And we don't give a shit if we do this extra.
One of the few distilleries in the country that is still manufactured in a dry county. Lynchburg, Tennessee, you can't get a drink there.
That's
you can't get one.
amazing.
You can't get one at the distillery.
And they stay there. I guess it's like the original Guinness.
Yeah, in Dublin.
Just in Dublin, has been there. I don't know how many hundred and some years, but their original lease. This is going back to when they started. Was like $5 a year
for 1,000 years,
and they signed it in perpetuity.
Right. So I mean,
that's
why would you move?
I mean, back then it was a huge risk, I'm sure, but they stood the test of time, and now they're. Can you imagine if your overhead was only $5 a year on your building?
I would love that.
Oh, this is amazing, by the way. You did wonderful.
Yeah, it's my property taxes, as you can see, the neighborhood's kind of getting
it's
a little bit nicer than it was
so
when we first got here.
It was 4 years ago. I had to look twice and say, wait a minute, am I going to the right spot? What happened to the distillery? You got all these high rises around you.
It's frightening. Although it's great too, because we hope that these are all residential places, that this could be our next customers.
Oh, a feeder. I mean, walk across the street after work, come down, have a couple of drinks, go home. They can stumble home.
Right.
It's location.
Yeah. So,
so as I'm going through this, everybody, I'm going through what used to be the tour. So we went through the history of Savannah, went into the barrel room.
Yep.
Let me ask you one more thing about the barrel room. Because you had told me when you were putting the building together, you're going to have the barrel. So the barrels that you put up by the air intake.
Yeah.
How long do those have to continue? And then to throw out a little teaser, when might those be released to the general public?
So we have a barrel aging space that we do some crazy stuff to. We circulate the air in it 6 times an hour, which means every bit of air that's in there is cycled in and cycled out, filtered in, filtered out.
Like an airplane.
Like an airplane, 6 times an hour. The reason we do that is we want to bring all the environment outside in as best we can, other than getting rained on or direct sunlight. Mm-hmm. The weather's the same as it is outside 99.9% of the time. That helps with barrel respiration and things like that. The room was designed for 900 barrels. We've got about 600 and some odd, I think, depending on how many they put in today. Almost 700 barrels in there right now. We'll probably be able to squeeze in 1,000, 1,100.
Does that affect the flavor, the more barrels you put, or it's not even negligible?
It's negligible.
So minute.
I mean, the challenge is when we would start to change the airflow is when it's going to be a problem, because then we'll get dead spots, stagnant air, or stagnant spots that
kind of similar to an oven. You get hot spots in an oven.
Right.
You rotate the food,
and you'll get where it'll affect the aging of the barrel a little bit different than the rest of the room. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, because then there's your next barrel strength product that you get basically 250 bottles a barrel out of it, and depending on what proof you make it at, and all right, now it's a selective custom version of what we do, so it makes it for fun, collectors, the items, things like that. Mm-hmm. But what's funny is you mentioned the air intakes, where we have certain areas in the room where air comes in, comes out at its strongest. So I think we got 6 intakes and 4 exhausts in there. I think it's 10 total. And what we've done is we've taken, our master bourbon is 4 different mash bills that we blend into one. And what we did with all those is we put 1 barrel of each in front of those intakes out of curiosity to see, are these 4 going to all taste the same or are they not, because of where they are?
What's it going to do?
What's it going to do? I mean, it's a fun experiment because of maybe it gets more sun, so it heats up a little bit more, so the air that comes in before it's all blended together is a little warmer.
Right.
Or a little colder.
And have you moved those, or you kept them in the same spot?
Kept them in the same spot.
For all 4 years?
All 4 years. The only thing that we did different was we put the order of the 4 different mash bills in different orders. Basically, you got 4 barrels, you got 16 different spaces that you could put that barrel.
You've got 1,000 bottles of something that could be just ridiculously off the charts.
With those 4 barrels,
For 250 barrels or bottles per barrel, and you've got 4 barrels that have been your experiments.
8, 12, 16.
Oh, jeez.
And that's just for that little fun experiment.
And do the what's the technical term for the mad scientists in the back room?
Distiller.
Distiller. Okay, it is distiller. So do they test it periodically, or is it if you pull that cork, you're going to ruin the whole chemistry?
Every barrel we have, after it reaches the first 90 days, it goes in, gets tasted every 90 days. So it goes 90 days, doesn't get touched with, doesn't get messed with.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it goes on a clock. And every barrel, every 90 days gets tasted. And we see what's going on with it.
Just to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to.
Make sure it's doing what it's supposed to. We document notes so we can compare to the next, 180 aged barrel. Everything gets data pointed, and we can then go back and say, okay, this barrel is 270 days old. Its brothers ahead of it that are older tasted like this at 270. We do the same thing, and we compare a little bit. Compare notes, things like that. Make sure that we taste at the same time of the day, and kind of it's a control factor.
Right, as much as you possibly can.
Right. And so everything gets tasted in some way every 90 days, so we know what's going on. And then if something goes wrong, we know, and then we make a determination what we're going to do with it. Are we going to just leave it alone? Most of the time when we're young, because they'll figure themselves out.
Right.
Sometimes it's time of the year. Is it wintertime? Is it summertime when it got put in? Because, that 90-day, 180-day period could be different, thank you, than because it was there in the summertime and tasted in the winter.
That's a lot of vodka.
Yeah. It's party time.
Just so everybody knows, we are doing this in a distillery. So if you hear some background noise, but one of the staff here has been slowly feeding us test product. Everything we're talking about, we're testing while we're doing this show.
Yeah, that's what they call it. But so I mean, we're constantly, everything's evolving in there every day, and we're constantly trying to stay ahead of it.
How do you know on those particular barrels when it's time? Because if the fellow who's the legend told you don't age anything longer than 7 years, and you have those barrels in there now 4+, how do you know when to start pulling those out and then introducing those as a proprietary, not a proprietary blend, but here's our premier top shelf.
Well, the beauty of it is when we started distilling in 2016, January 4th, 16 days later, on the 20th, we had our first set of barrels that went in, and they've kind of shown the way. Mm-hmm. And so everything up to that or past that has been kind of given a documented travel. So we know what to or expect to taste when we taste and things like that. So we've made blueprints on what's going on, and lucky for us that everything's kind of stayed in its course. Now, different recipes and things like that we're playing with, but mash bills are all different. They all taste different. They're all unique in their own way. So we kind of got an idea, but we also know too what ingredients we put in, what we should expect to taste like as it ages. We've got several different varieties that will age longer than that 7-year program, just because we did something different with them. Like we got 32 barrels we call the Misfits. It's like we do things crazy here at night sometimes, and it was holiday season, and it was the Misfit of toys were on TV, and it was stupid, but we designated these 32 barrels because they were a program that we were doing. We were taking the heads and tails of everything, keeping them, and then redistilling them after a distillation, after a distillation, after a distillation. So we literally would redistill this stuff 4 or 5 times just to extract all the alcohol out of it and then see what the hell it would do. What's crazy is it's really unique. It's not going to be a liquid for everybody, but it's got some character to it that it just keeps getting better with age. And so, it probably is going to be one of the only stuff that we age 10, 14, 15 years just to see what might happen. And we've discontinued doing that because it was a waste of energy and man hours and things like that, because it was when we were just getting going, so we had time. And now we don't have really that kind of time to do that anymore.
No, not when you're in, what'd you say, 11 states?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got that. That's kind of the shitty thing is you as you're progressing, you lose the ability to have the creative side just to kind of.
Right. I mean, that's the, ideally.
Time is too much time. The devil's advocate starts to come
right.
out.
Right, and this was, on our big still, our 500 gallons guy. So, what most likely will end up starting to happen here as we get older and quote air quotes mature, we'll start doing stuff from a unique R&D stuff on the smaller still, the 40 gallon, kind of getting back to our roots of just screwing around.
Right.
Which will be fun because that's where I actually like to be nowadays.
It's like you said, it's the fun side.
Yeah.
And as we go into that room through our tour, if you could just listen, if you haven't been here, you got to stop if you get to the Savannah area or make a special trip. But as we go through that area, you guys do your own bottling.
Yep.
You've got the what's the room that's the one where the dust and everything are that you got to be.
The milling room.
The milling room.
We mill here. I mean, we truly go from farm to bottle, in essence. I mean, 70. I think we did this math on this, and 71 or 72% of everything that becomes liquid in our bottles is grown within 100 miles here. Mm-hmm. And the only other 28, 29% is stuff that just isn't grown in the state of Georgia because the environment or soil is not conducive. So we really are as local, if you want to call it, source as possible.
Yeah, and I wanted to get to that because as we touched on the culture and the mantra before, in what you guys started and what you set out to do, that it's very cool, very interesting that you do utilize a lot of local businesses, a lot of the you've embraced the culture of Savannah. There's no obviously, right?
Right. I mean, it's kind of part of it is because that aspect of it kind of imposes its flavor and profile of what and who we've set out to try to be. I mean, we want to be a Savannah spirit. I mean, we're spirits of Savannah. And so the way to do that is embrace not just, materials, but also culture, idiosyncrasies, personalities, everything that goes along with it, because it all is a factor of the end result.
Yeah, and the one that stands out to me, just knowing Savannah the way I do and living in this area for so long, is, as we talked about early on, it's like, okay, we're not gonna stick our crazies in the backyard in some shed so nobody can see. We're gonna stick them out in the front yard, and like you said earlier, poking the bear is like, okay, we're gonna do these things that maybe no one else thought to do, and we have the ability to do it because we're not, we're again smaller, meaning relative compared to the rest of the industry who's been around for a century, and we're going to do what we want, but in the meantime, we're going to make sure that we're doing it great.
Yeah, but also as we're doing it, we're not taking ourselves too seriously as well.
Oh, and that kind of goes with one of the questions I had, because as long as I've been coming here, the staff is always very happy, and you can't fake that, right? So the culture you created, not just as your brand or your company, it flows through the entire organization to where whoever's working the counter at the checkout for hats or bottles or paraphernalia, all the bartenders, all the wait staff, they all enjoy being here.
We have a motto here. It's, work hard, play hard, and that's what we do. But again, it's that whole aspect of this is an industry. If you don't want to have fun, then we don't want you here, because we'll drive you crazy if you're not wanting to have fun because that's all we do,
Mm-hmm.
and life's too short kind of mantra.
Do you think it is the figurehead, the owner, the leader that enables you to have a lot of trust factor with your employees at all levels?
I'd like to hope so, because I don't want our employees to think that they have to fit inside a certain box.
Mm-hmm.
I just want them to bring whatever it is every day that's the best that they can be. And if they do that, and they have that mindset, we'll all be successful.
Does that go into the hiring process too? When you go through interviews, it's okay, you all might do, like my brother was on the show the other day. He was talking about the culture of PXG versus the culture of Titleist, because he worked for both. And he said, look, Titleist was buttoned up. You had to be clean shaven every time you went out. And that was fine. That's what they had, or that's what they represented. PXG, like he said, they don't care if you have a braided goatee. If you're selling $20,000 of product in a week,
yep,
that's all that's what their focus is. So it's a much more relaxed culture, and one of the reasons that we pointed to that they made such a very fast rise in the industry. If you're doing what you need to do and treating people the way they need to be treated, within the whole of what the company represents, meaning the experience, very similar to what you guys are doing, then that's the people we want. And if you're not like that, hey, we think, instead of making it difficult for both of us and you not being happy here, we think you'd be a better fit over here.
Yeah, I mean, we're in that growth stage of a company and an organization and life cycle where we've got to appeal to anybody and everybody. So for us, we don't discriminate. We just want to make sure the only thing that's mandated is you have fun.
Have fun. Get the job done.
Be responsible. Be respective, and that's it.
You get a seat at the table.
Right. And everything else, as long as you follow those rules, which are very, we don't like rules.
You've been that from the beginning.
Yeah.
So you're the way that you've approached it hasn't changed at all.
No, and it won't. At least while I'm here. If I'm not here, driving the culture and what we expect out of what people are, ghost coasters that we call ourselves and things like that, then fine. But that's, as long as I'm here and honored enough to lead the way, that's what we're going to do. And that's how we're going to be, because it's easy when it's your culture, because it's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some facade or some fakeness where you have to make it up every day.
Right.
This is what we do because we want to do that.
Easy to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
You almost look forward to it.
Right. I mean, I can honestly say I don't think I've woken up by an alarm clock in the last 5+ years, other than maybe being hungover one morning or two. But
it goes with the
territory.
When you own a liquor business, you're going to have to deal with that once in a while.
But I mean, you get what I'm saying. We wake up to do this job every day because we want to, and we like the people that we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. Yeah, I mean, we're like family. Some days we don't like each other, but that doesn't mean that we don't, respect each other and enjoy each other's company. Sometimes it's just bad day or something like that, but it's still fun.
Who are some of the local companies that can throw let them tell everybody who they are? Some of the local companies that you've been working with and utilizing their things integrated with what you guys have done.
So we, one of our largest lines, our honey whiskey, is from Savannah Bee.
That stuff's really good.
It's pretty good. Our ginger syrup from Lebanon Farms up the road in Guyton. We get all of they harvest their ginger from the farm there, and we get it, and it's about the best as it can be. We get peaches from a farm outside of Macon, Dickey Farms. They're great. Other than the 3 days of hell of peeling and de-pitting 2.5 tons of peaches.
That's a lot of peaches.
Oh my God!
Holy shit.
I hate peaches after those 3 days, but before then, I love it.
Not having any peach cobbler anytime after that.
Oh, God, no. I mean, it's like, okay, that's enough. Let's see. Who else is... we, like Alma, we work with a granary out of Alma, Georgia, which is 100 miles southwest of here. And they're awesome. I mean, they deliver and bring the corn. We'll go through 4 tons of corn every 9 days. I mean, that's
4 tons in 9 days.
Yeah, that's a lot of corn.
That is a lot of corn.
And they deliver it, and the guys that deliver it are happy as they've ever. I mean, every time they come here, it's good. You want anything else? You're about to do last call.
What? Can I get one more? That ridiculously amazing. What was this called again?
The Time Traveler.
Time Traveler. This is crazy.
It's good.
I got a new favorite drink called the Time Traveler. Ghost Coast Distillery, Savannah, Georgia.
It's like that was a plug or something.
We might have to make that one like the thumbnail. Ooh. Picture of the Time Traveler.
Yeah, for sure. Smoke version of it, too.
Yeah, the smoke. I was telling my cousin about that you guys do a smoke version. I said I had no idea what they do, but it looked cool as shit. And I'm sure it tastes unbelievable. Now he listens to all these, so I can attest to that, yeah. And I'll bring him up here. We talked about it when he comes up. In working with the local vendors in Savannah being like a giant family, that's obviously made a big enhancement, or has been a big enhancement and benefit to the company. I should say that it's an additional part of the family. Like Savannah's embraced you as part of the Savannah family.
I'm going to tell you that there's no. I mean, you could do your master's thesis on this last year that we've had.
Cool.
Because we all are going through this still. I mean, we don't eat at restaurants anymore. We don't go to bars anymore, unfortunately. I mean, you and I have had some good times at some good bars. But
that'd be a podcast for another time.
Yeah. But
without self-incriminating.
What's crazy is since March 21st, that's all changed for 2020. And still is changed right now. And what's interesting is, to your point, thank you. To your point, it's more of the locals have really been saviors for us and our brand, because as we were going through this pandemic, let me back up for a second and kind of give a quick little definition. We have 2 markets that we service. One's called on-premise and one called off-premise. On-premise is what are categorized as bars and restaurants. Off-premise are package stores where you go, beer and wine, spirits. They can be sold in one store, or beer and wine, because it's a different license, can be sold in other store. So March 21st, it all changed. Off-premise basically stopped until September, October. And it finally kicked back on because we started getting a handle of what was going on with the virus, wearing masks, washing hands, social distancing.
People at least started to venture out a little bit.
Right. So the only way that we were staying in business was off-premise. And we saw a huge influx of business, and I can only attest it to locals wanting to support local businesses by maybe not buying those name brand beverages, not all the time, but we all know we all drank more because of this pandemic because we were stuck at home. But what I'm convinced of, and to this day very thankful for, is the facet that you may be a drinker of the atypical big brand, but that doesn't mean you weren't substituting that big brand every once in a while with us or somebody like us, because you were doing your part to help the little guy like us stay in business. And I will never forget that, and nor will most of our craft distilleries in the state of Georgia and South Carolina and Florida, for that, mind you, because it really gave us buoyed a life preserver to get to where we could at least make it. And
kept you afloat.
Oh, it kept us afloat, as well as, a lot of us pivoted when we needed to because our communities were asking for it, made hand sanitizer to help keep people disinfect and things like that, and we did that as well. And that was another facet of what made us get through the lean meantime to where we were able to come through the other end and say, all right, we're not there yet, but we at least survived so we can then try to get back to some normalcy.
There's a lot to be said about it's not goodwill, it's just helping your fellow man, especially in an area that seems to be let's call it the unwritten law for this area. And if you don't, you're going to get excommunicated out of this area. But if you do, your fellow man is going to take care of you, even if you might not get along with them. Let's say you're not adversaries, but it's like, if you're from a big family, you might not get along with one of your siblings, but there's no way in hell that someone from down the block is going to come over and mess with that sibling, because you're going to jump in and beat the hell out of them. So it's kind of that's the kind of way I view it. But when you give goodwill and you embrace the area that you live in, that you do your business in, and you do everything else, and you have the same identity, you have the same passion for things, you have, and again, you might differ here and there, like you said, not every day is going to get along, but when you need their help, they're going to help you, and when they needed your help, you were helping them, right? Because one of the things you do that I wanted to touch on, you even though you guys have a bar where you can sell your own product, you don't compete with the people you sell to or you supply for within the Savannah area, meaning the bars and the restaurants.
Correct. In fact, we make it a point to, Savannah historically is one that likes to start later and finish early. And what I mean by that is, bars, excluding the restaurants, they don't really get cranked up until 10:30, 11 o'clock. Well, we don't stay open until we close at 8. I mean, we just had last call at 7:30, 7:40.
Right.
So we're not taking away from our best customers.
And that's something you didn't have to do. That's something you guys chose to do.
We chose to do it, yeah.
Right.
And then, what's also nice is we get a large percentage of tourists in our place. And, you can't go 5 minutes without, well, we're here in Savannah, we've done some research, but where else do we go? And lo and behold, if you buy a Ghost Coast product, I guarantee you, without a doubt, you will be mentioned on a place to go visit and patronize, especially if you're a tourist visiting from afar, because we like to your point, we take care of our own, right, and support local, but also we want you, the visitor, the guest, as we like to call them, get the true Savannah look and feel. Mm-hmm. We want you to go see that crazy cousin that's on the front porch playing the banjo in his boxers and no shirt on.
Playing the bongos, running around in their underwear and naked.
That's us.
It's got the development, and I had not been on this far side of River Street in a long time, because, even how many years was it, 10, 12 years ago, you and I went to the rodeo bar. I remember that night.
Yeah.
And there was nothing down this way on River Street. That whole...
No, you were told don't come...
Don't go down that way.
Don't go across MLK after 10, because you're liable to not come back.
Right. And what they've done there recently, what is it, the JW Marriott?
Yeah, playing Riverside. It's incredible.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
That's shows you what you can get for $400 million.
Just $400 million.
Yeah, hey, got that in my pocket.
You got it lying around, anything. You got it sitting in a bank account and nothing else to do with it. How about throwing it down in River Street?
Yeah.
Redeveloping the old area that's just been sitting there.
Have you seen the Brontosaurus?
No, we were there for day after Christmas, and with the whole family, cousin's family, and everyone was here. And it was just too many people to babies and teenagers.
Right.
It was just seniors. It's just too big a demographic to try to make everybody happy.
It is impressive, to say the least. Just walk through that place with a drink. They got 7 bars there, and they carry all of Ghost Coast products, which is nice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like 2 blocks away. I hope
Right. Yeah, but I mean, holy mackerel. A life-size chrome version of a brontosaurus in the ceiling.
That just tells you how big the place is.
I mean, you don't see that anywhere.
Mm-mm.
And then, I mean, it's amazing.
And it kind of just goes, again, going back to that Savannah.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to do what the hell we want to. If you don't like it, Charleston's about 90 miles up the road.
Yeah, go have fun.
Go have fun. Knock yourself out.
Yeah.
We're going to do what we want here. We're going to have fun.
Yeah.
What's next for Ghost Coast and you guys? As we're the COVID, as we're hopefully coming out of this and we're into 2021, what's the next thing?
We're in a growth mood, man. We're looking to utilize in the last 4 years of seeing visitors and guests from all over the country and the world. We're going to go find them. Mm-hmm. Different states, growth in those regards to get back to those people that may not have come back to visit, but we constantly get emails and communication from folks, either instant messaging or things like that of, when you guys come in here, when you come into this state, when you come into that state, because we miss having your product. And so we're in a growth cycle. We're going to, we're putting the right people in the right places. We're hiring. We're looking for those sales and marketing people that want to have fun, want to work hard, want to get behind a brand and get connected with a brand that really wants to go places and wants to add to someone's professional career in a way that's not conventional. Mm-hmm. But that's where we're going. We're going to, domestically is really the focus right now until the international markets seem a little bit more, tariff war that we've been under for the last 5 years is pretty tough. Mm-hmm. So we got to see some of that stuff reel back before we can focus on international stuff. But in the meantime, we got a giant country here that needs our products.
Needs your stuff.
Yeah.
They're hearing about it. They want it.
Yeah.
This question, I hate this question because I was asking it in job interviews, but being that you guys are now through your infancy, you're in development stage and growth stage, where do you see your company and the distillery in 5 years?
Man, I would hope, or let me rephrase that. We will be in at least 25 states, maybe playing in the areas of international, EU, Asia. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going to be in 5 years. And we're going to be at least a major player in the spirits world, definitely on the regional side, if not East Coast side.
Right.
We just have too much skill. We have too much really good product that is kind of taken on its own life cycles, and now it's like, just get out of the way and let them go. That's where we're going to be.
You've developed it. You've nurtured it. Let it rip.
I mean, now we start to fill in the pieces, and it's like as a kid where you got a map and you would thumbnail stuff, places that you go mm-hmm. visit just to see where all you went. Well, we're starting to get those thumbnails more touching each other, and then this year is that big year where we make that big incremental jump. Mm-hmm. And then we start to look at major markets, New York, Texas, California, Florida.
Major cities.
Major states. I mean,
okay.
The top 5 in the country that consume alcohol is New York, California, Florida. Those are the ones that we'll be in. Massachusetts, it goes in sync with population.
Right.
But those are the ones that we are on our radar now for the next 5 years.
If we go back to where we started with the golf connection, and it is a golf podcast, but again, it's called Golf 360 because, like I tell everybody, it encompasses anything and everything has to do with golf. If you had a mulligan, was there anything that you do over again?
Wow, that's a good one. That's a really good one. There'd be several I'd redo again. I think the one, if I had one mulligan to do over again, I might take that first year that we were open in 2017 and only focus on making booze and nothing else. No tours, no retail. Kind of
any promotional things that you guys did then? Would you keep that? Because you got to get it out there somehow.
No, because I'll tell you why. Because we only had 4 products at that time. We had 2 vodkas and 2 flavored whiskeys. And the whiskeys were young. They were only 9 months old. And it wasn't the best. It wasn't shitty, but it wasn't the best. And I think
it was something your grandma would give you with some honey and a wool blanket if you're feeling a little under the weather.
They were flavored for a reason. So we could hide some impurities in it. So I think if I was to get that mulligan, I would have just made booze for a year and let stuff age that we were trying to sell.
Would you distribute to local liquor stores and restaurants and bars, but just not market it and promote it outside of, hey, we're local, here's what we got?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because, I mean...
Because you got to have something coming in.
Well, you do, but you don't.
Okay.
I mean, we could have been just making booze, making whiskey, making bourbon, and putting it away and not had the influx of overhead and human beings and worrying about keeping them employed.
Responsibility.
Right. I mean, there goes to say about if you're going to spend money, spend it wisely and not foolishly. In that first year, we learned a lot. We also spent a lot of money. The hard way. And, I mean, plus the laws at that time hadn't evolved yet to where they were now. And so, we, at that first year, this is crazy, and people are going to say, what? But we couldn't sell bottles of booze. We could give them away if someone bought a bottle tour,
right,
and things like that.
And that was the genesis of the tour, wasn't it?
It was, but but it also was the scenario of we didn't have the drink program yet because the laws hadn't changed yet, so we had enough to be somewhat dangerous on a tourism side of it. But hindsight, always 2020. It wouldn't have hurt us to just make booze for a year and build some momentum up into not so much novelty, but take that year to build up the interest in what we were doing.
Yeah, build the pressure.
Yeah. That's
everybody wants it. No, you can't have it.
Can't have it yet. Because then it would have changed the dynamic where we were just like, you could have it, let's go. And I'm not going to say it fell short, but it wasn't as exciting as it could have been. And I think that's where you learn in this industry how to really market. And not everything you don't need to jump at every opportunity.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and for some who don't know, I mean, you having the bar and being able to serve your own product, that was not in the original plan. It was more tours. If I remember right, you guys were going to have tours. It was going to be about $40, which would have been the equivalent of a bottle.
Right.
And then at the end of the tour, somebody get a free bottle of booze.
Get a free bottle, and you could only have up to 1.5 ounces of booze to taste. That was it.
Basically, it's half a shot.
Half a shot, half an ounce per 4 variants, and there's your limit.
But the way the laws changed, it allowed you to have your own.
Yeah.
Basically, you became not only a distiller, but you're a bar owner.
Right.
And that changed that whole.
Changed the whole dynamic.
Changed the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
So for those of you who have been here, the bar was not in the original plan. It was going to be tours.
Right.
But it completely changed it, and I think for the better. At least I hope so.
Oh, yeah. So far. So much better.
Right.
But that's, if for my mulligan would have been just make booze for the first year and learn a lot.
Yeah. Create the demand, and then, I would probably say something similar with the podcast. But as we share, we never listen to the way we're supposed to do it. It's like, hell with that. Let's just
let's do it.
Let's do what we're going to do and throw it down and just get started. If you weren't the Spirit King of Savannah, what would you be in? What would you have done?
It would have been something in booze. It's just too fun of an industry not to be in it. I might have opened up some crazy ass bar.
That would have been, well, you've got that now, plus you've got the supply. But
yeah,
that would have been a lot of fun too.
I don't know. I mean, I've been pretty lucky and blessed with the careers that I've had leading up to this one. So I mean, who's to say? It probably would have been some type of bar in some capacity. I mean,
well, I think it's the people aspect. Knowing you as long as I have, you're a people person. I can't see you not being around people, being able to interact, and being stuck in some office looking at Excel spreadsheets all day long.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind that at all. I enjoy that, but I think I really get a high off of empowering people to push themselves and find out new things about themselves that they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's rewarding in a lot of ways.
It's got to make. If somebody does leave here and they go, let's say they're an employee, let's say they're a bartender and they leave and hey, I've got an opportunity to move to Atlanta and work at this high end. It's got to make you feel good that they made it come in at an elementary level bartender capacity and they're leaving to go to a 4 or 5 star restaurant in a major city.
Man, I can think of three people that have come here working behind the bar, and they were novice to somewhat talented and learned a lot, to where now they're running their own shows, they're managing really high-end bars, and they're first to say, I learned in an environment that was a lot of fun, that gave me a lot of flexibility to try things.
It gave me the opportunity to grow without repercussions of what the hell did you do that for? Yeah,
I mean, other than cussing out a customer at the bar or something like that, you pretty much got free reign to do whatever the hell you want here. Hell, that's a broad spectrum of how to learn.
That's a great environment to learn in.
Yeah. It fosters that opportunity to say, if you fail, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Because you don't learn unless you fail.
I don't think people understand how big that is. To remove that burden of failure. And you spoke to it earlier that you guys weren't afraid to fail. I've had Fortune 50 CEOs on here. I've had PGA Tour, sports psychology. I've had everybody on here. And the overriding mantra, not even mantra, but the thought process, if you want to achieve something, you're going to fail. So number one, accept it, that's going to happen. And number two, don't look at it as a negative. Look at it as a redirection, the ability to learn something, to grow, and advance yourself. Because if you don't, as we talked about earlier, if you're not growing, you're going in another direction. And you're not ever, I don't care how good you are at any field or anything, you're never going to be good enough that you're not going to screw up at some point.
Complacency is a direct byproduct of an unwillingness to fail. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do that, you're cheating yourself. Shit. I can't count how many times I've failed professionally, but I can honestly tell you this, that the failures I walk out of it learning something, not just about myself, but about the industry, the business side of it, things like that, that makes me a better human being on the other end. Mm-hmm. And that's really, in my opinion, that supersedes success and failure from a financial side or anything like that. If you don't become a better human being as you get older, you're missing the whole reason why you're on this earth to begin with.
Yeah, that burning that you feel internally when you make a mistake or fail, that's what you want. That's the fire that's going to push you beyond what your comfort level is, and you need that.
Because, that's the drive.
Right, that's the drive. You need something to push you over that hurdle, that obstacle, to bang through it. To whatever you want to, however you want to phrase that. You need that failure to. Otherwise, it's just you're never going to get anywhere being comfortable all the time.
Yeah, no. I mean, that mentor that I talked about earlier in the podcast, find a job, find an industry that's recession proof. He also taught me something real quickly. Is like, business would be easy if you didn't have to deal with people.
No shit.
But that's the whole.
It'd be boring too.
Right, and that's the whole thing. Is people are the real reason of what you do, why you do it. And if you don't embrace it and want to be around them and try to help them better themselves, because in essence, karma's a bitch. If you don't embrace it, you're going to help them better themselves. And in a lot of ways, some way, shape, or form, they're going to help you better yourself.
Well, I mean, a perfect example is the example you gave about doing what you could to help the local community, the local businesses, and everything else. All the things that you put in place that you never had to do, but you wanted to contribute to the community, right in line, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, with the culture of Savannah, everything aligned, and then when you needed their help, without even asking, they were there for you because they understood that. And that does not come from a conscious level. That comes from an emotional level. That comes from a subconscious level that says, hey, look, this Ghost Coast is one of us. We're all going through a difficult time. If it comes down to buying name brand, or I can go buy Ghost Coast and support someone who aligns with who I am, you're damn right I'm going to do it. And it's not even a second thought. It's like, here's what I'm doing. And they're proud to do it. And then the next thing you know, they're wearing your logo. Yep. They're proud because what you represent is what they represent. It's like, hey, these guys are who I am.
The biggest high I get out of this thing, which is a lot of them because I drink a lot, but is when people come and say, I'm here, I want to buy a gift to send or give to somebody who isn't from here, but I want them to have a sense of what Savannah is all about. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is the most humbling and most gratifying thing that anybody does, because that means that we're societal.
Right.
And it'll be
here. You're a part. You're
a part of it, and it's going to be here whether I go get hit by a bus tomorrow or not. That's going to go on, and that's, to me, that's success from a position of that's what we made. That's what we started out this whole project from back of a napkin, 3 a.m, had way too much sake and whiskey. Said, let's do this, Rob.
Sake and whiskey, hell of a mixture.
Oh, it was horrible, and a shitload of sushi that we ended up seeing later that night, but it was fantastic.
So let's. I mean, we've been going we're 2+ hours. Let's get our back 9 rapid fire and
sure.
Get the hell out of here and go have another drink or 4, like the old days. All right, I got 9 questions. Rapid emergency 9.
All right.
Texter or caller?
Oh, caller.
Yeah, me too. We're old school that way. Best drink that you either ever made or ever had?
Oh, time traveler.
Oh, no shit. I tested that one.
Smoke time traveler.
Smoke time traveler.
Yeah, with the master bourbon.
Yes. that just knocked transfusion off the mountain. Sorry, Brian Clements.
Transfusion has its day.
Yes, in the summer.
That's a morning drink. You can't have a time traveler in the morning.
I got to apologize, and I'm not only going to mention Brian, but Brian, Trent Bryson, Scott Weeks. Got to knock it.
Hey, boys. Love you.
Boys,
Miss you.
Knocking transfusion from the top of the mountain. Time travelers is the new king. Okay, nickname growing up.
Nickname growing up. Swizzle.
You might regret saying that one.
Swizzle, for short for Swizzle Stick.
Oddest thing in your golf bag.
Oddest thing in my golf bag?
Mm-hmm.
A fifth of booze.
Given our group, that's not too odd a thing, but for the majority of the rest of the world, that is an odd thing. This is an odd question, but this was a cool one. As I was going over updating my Emergency 9. Bigger badass, John Wick or the Equalizer?
Oh, John Wick.
John
for
Wick's
certain.
a badass.
God, love that guy.
Love him.
But funny story.
He hadn't been in here, has he?
No, he hasn't. But he's more than welcome because the Wick series is what I go to when I'm feeling down. And my wife says, "What the hell does that mean? How depressed can you be to go to John Wick to watch that?" I said, "The guy is just perseveres. Mm-hmm. So he gets through it, and he just powers through. So how is that not uplifting? Because he's gone through so much. He gets shot so much. He gets stabbed so much, but yet he keeps going.
Keeps going.
So yeah, he's a motivator for me.
You got to tell her, hey, look at if anything happened to you and Hank.
Oh.
This is what I do.
This is what I would do.
I'll tell you what. So my dad and the literature savant that he is. He actually told me, he said that the Continental is a metaphor for hell, and Winston is actually the devil.
Yeah.
So that gives
see that.
Right.
Yeah.
That gives a whole different perspective on the whole Wick.
It's hell. The Continental is hell, but it's not. There's no activities that you receive when you're in hell.
No, it's
the opposite.
It lets you do it on your own.
Right. It lets you go out and do it, but you don't. Hell doesn't happen in the Continental, but it is hell because of all the spirits that walk into that place.
Let's see, a couple more. Would you rather never miss a fairway or never 3-putt again?
I would rather never 3-putt again.
Yeah, no shit. Because that could get frustrating as hell. You miss a fairway, whoopee ding dong. It's 300 yards or whatever it is.
Man,
you miss a 2-footer.
Some of my best shots has come because I've missed the fairway.
Mm-hmm. The ones you remember.
Yeah.
Let's see. Last book you read. Get into this. The
last book I read was it was, oh crap, what was it? It was a Thomas Wolfe man drama. No, it wasn't. It was what's his name from Beaufort? The Last Santini.
Great Santini?
Yeah.
Who did write? I've watched the movie 100 times.
He just passed away a year ago, 2 years ago. God, I forget. But local writer wanted to reread it. I think I reread it because he died, and that was it. Yeah.
Cool. Keeps with the local mantra.
Yeah.
Most used app on your phone?
Probably. Oh no, that's an easy one. It's my my blood alcohol level of whether I can drive or not.
Perfect for this podcast. What is it? So anyone out there who loves indulging.
DUI or no DUI, I've got a little deal that plugs into my phone that I actually blow into, and it tests whether or not I am of legal limit or not. So I don't drive home because it would be catastrophic for me if I got a DUI.
Yeah,
because I'd lose because our distilling license is attached to human and not an entity, a business entity, and so it's attached to me. And if I got a DUI, it would be vacated immediately, and the business would go out of business. So yeah, no. I mean,
so where would somebody get it? Is App Store?
App Store.
Okay, and if they order it on the App Store, then the company sends them.
They'll send the adapter because it depends on what kind of phone you have and how it attaches.
That's
and
awesome.
It's great.
How much?
It's like the app is free, and depending on how severe or how sensitive the adapter is, the adapter could be $29.99 or up to $99.99.
Hey, it's a hell of a lot less than what an attorney's going to call you. You get pulled over for
$18,000 for a DUI. I've never had one, but that's what I understand.
And then you got to get expunged and the whole shitstorm that goes with that.
No, it's not worth it.
All right, last one, and everyone gets this one. Greatest of all time, Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods? Because you and I both transverse that genre.
You got to go with Jack still because he has more than Tiger, right?
Yeah, I say this almost every podcast because I get that response, is that Jack still has the major record, but Tiger's story's not over yet. I mean, I know he had the fifth, or what do you have, like his fifth surgery, another appendectomy. Yeah,
but that was clean up bone spurs. It wasn't damage or anything for his.
The Tiger story's not. Jack just turned 81, I think, a week or two ago. Tiger's story's still. His book hasn't come to the final chapter.
But, okay, so the question I have is: does GOAT classify only majors, or is it total
whatever
wins?
You want, whatever I think that might, because it's 50-50 right now. If I went back through all 30, what are you? You're 39. If I went back through all 38, I would say it's probably pretty damn close to 1919. Largely dependent on era that the person grew up in. So if they were younger, let's say under 25, they went Tiger. If they were older, they went Jack.
So GOAT, by definition, is greatest of all times, right?
Yes.
So who has the most wins?
Tiger's got the most wins. Jack's got the most majors. So that begs the question: what is more important, majors? Now, Brandel Chambly makes the argument that Jack came in the top 5, I think, a larger percentage of the time than Tiger did. The contradictory argument to that is, well, the fields are much, much more deep now, or in the modern era that Tiger's competing in. I mean, it's an endless argument.
So I think here's the end all be all to that conversation. If Tiger wins a major at 48 years old, he's the GOAT.
What's he at now?
He's 42?
No, he's 2 years younger than me. So I think 2 years. Yeah, 2 years younger than me. He's going to be 47 this year. So,
so if he wins a major after 48 that Jack did,
right? But
then he's the GOAT.
Tiger's got 15 professional majors. See, what they snuck in there was it used to always be, well, Nicklaus has 20. He's got, I think it was 18 professional and 2 amateurs. Okay,
right.
Tiger's got 15 professional and 3 amateurs. So he's at 18. But all of a sudden, in all the things that they do, they change the metric.
Tweak it.
Yes.
I think the overriding greatest of all time, because, I mean, yeah, you compare Brady.
Yeah, Brady is now, after what he did last weekend, I don't even think there's an argument even against his detractors.
No, but the fact that
it's like his 10th Super Bowl.
10th Super Bowl, won 7 or won 6. And getting ready to try to win 7. Hopefully he does, even though I'm not a Brady fan. You want
to see it.
I want to see it, but I also want it to happen because he plays in the NFC South, which is where my team is. So it's that proverbial I follow my division deadfully. Because then when he beat me twice, I can say, well, we lost our Super Bowl
It's like the Calcutta. You're pulling for the team in your division.
Yeah, that beat us. But I think GOAT of all time also is you won your last major as the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's done that but Jack at 48.
Yeah, 46.
Yeah. So, and, Tiger's set up to do it at Augusta. He knows the course.
If he did Augusta again, I hope he does. I mean, with his career, you never count him out.
No.
Every time somebody's counted him out, he's proved him wrong. My whole thing is when he came back from the back issues, the personal issues he had, and everything else. To me, it was like a greyhound at the racetrack catching the rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
When he won that last Masters, like he caught it. You can never race a greyhound again once they catch that rabbit. And now to compound that, not to say that Tiger's going to be complacent once he wins another major, because he's always had that major mark on his radar. But I think the fact that his kids are now of age where he's enjoying them, and that was clearly evident in that father-son.
Yep.
And he got more joy out of watching his son play than he did playing. I think that's going to be his biggest attractor, where he is now made himself secondary to his kids. and to win majors, it's very, very difficult. Not to say that he can't be the one to do it, but it's very difficult to make yourself second position at that caliber of play. Not when you're, excuse me, not when you're competing against guys who are single like JT or
just not engaged.
It's not engaged.
Well, yeah. Plus, I think one of the bigger questions about that GOAT conversation is Jack never was injured. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Jack never had the injury.
Which is amazing that he played like that in a modern-day era, and now they got all the injuries, which is a whole another podcast.
Right, but I think that's where, you got to look at GOAT means he was able to do it for so much longer.
On that topic, I'm reaching out to, so if you guys listen, the GOATA, Greatest of All-Time Athletes, there's a whole group of guys that do this training called GOATA. I'm going to get them on to talk about exactly that thing. So
nice.
All right. So somebody wants to come to Distillery. They want to find you guys online. Where's the best way to check you guys out?
So website, ghostcoastdistillery.com. I know that's a mouthful. Trust me.
Social media. Where can they follow?
Social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We have them
all under Ghost Coast Distillery.
All under Ghost Coast Distillery.
And everyone listening, I'll have the links in the summary. Check it out. Click on it. Follow them. You won't be disappointed, especially after listening to this. Brother, I always love sitting with you. We don't get to do it enough.
We don't.
You're tied up. I'm tied up. I'm doing a whole bunch of different shit. I always love sitting down with you. It's been great.
You're the best.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.